G'day champs, Benson here, just giving you a language warning on this one. There's a fair few expletives in this cast, and I couldn't be bothered going through and bleeping them all. I covered a few magically with editing, but just apologising now in case Granny's listening and she doesn't like swear words. Enjoy.
Yeah, direct misfire, aiming up hits. Bend some spoon and sell liquor in the mix. Follow along, stay up to date. Comment, like, subscribe today.
Hello champs, and welcome to the first Direct Misfire Missive for 2020. Joining me, as always, is Hugh.
Hey, hombres!
As well as special guests Andrew.
What's up, nerds?
And Viv.
Hi.
As we record live from Canberra on the eve of the Clash of Kings Australia 2020 tournament. Now this episode is going to be a bit rough and raw, but hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. It's just a bit of a different setup.
Indeed, we've brought our sound equipment in transit, and hopefully it works as best it can. And we are indeed recording from Canberra, the most famous city in Australia, apart from Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and Brisbane.
Yes. Don't forget Darwin.
Oh, yeah, and of course Darwin, the pearl of the desert.
So, Clash of Kings, how are we all feeling about tomorrow's tournament?
Can't fucking wait!
Yeah, pumped.
Feeling good about your lists?
I'm going to decimate.
I'm really hoping that Viv comes low down the field.
So
and we'll reveal why in due course, I suppose.
Long-time listeners may remember Viv has appeared on one previous episode, I think on our Undead Army review.
Yeah, so early in second edition, Viv played like one game of Kings of War. 3, he claims. Now, so this is years ago now. And he did, for some reason we allowed him on the episode then. So now that he's played 2 more games, he seems to be coming back. But he's had a long break. Anyway, I'll let you explain that, Viv. How's your Kings of War journey, such as it is, gone so far?
Honestly, too soon to say. I've taken a long hiatus from rank and find games, but after one drunken night at Hugh's house, they convinced me to sign up. And, short of paying $600 for a flight to Canberra, that would have been cancelled anyway because there was a fire yesterday.
A good move.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one awesome road trip later, I'm here, and I'm honestly looking forward to just roll some dice again. It's been 4 years.
Now, welcome back. Welcome back to the ranks and the flanks, man.
There is a bet now, isn't there, about his position because he's quite confident.
Indeed. So Viv being Viv, we were getting drunk once a few weeks ago, saying goodbye to Dave. Listeners may remember Dave from other podcasts that we're affiliated with, although I don't think he's ever been on this one.
No.
But that's okay. Good old Dave of War was hoosting off to England, where he's now living permanently, or at least for the foreseeable future. So seeing Dave off, we're having a few beers, we're on the lash, whatever else. Viv says to me, I'm going to do so well at KingCon. And I'm like, bullshit you are. You've had 1 game of Kings of War. We'd only had 1 earlier that week. Since then he's played Andrew once. So he's had 2 whole practice games to learn 3rd edition. Now, I'll canvass this before we get to the bet itself that ensued shortly thereafter, in saying that Viv is actually a natural wargamer. When he says he's had a lot of years off from ranks and flank games, he has been playing other games. He plays a lot of Malifaux.
Yep.
He plays other tabletop games. Still hits up board games and stuff with us lads and stuff all the time. So he's not rusty. He just,
new to Kings of War.
Played Kings of War, really. And he's basically a newbie in that field. But like many wargamers that have a lot of experience elsewhere, he will pick it up quickly and he will do well. And he used to be a pretty good Warhammer player back in the day. I'd say, top 20% or so.
20%'s an interesting number you've chosen there, Hugh.
Indeed. Well, it wasn't me that chose it for this bet. So what happened, Viv?
Hugh walks in and Hugh Humblebrag Evans was like, do you know that I'm the 3rd to 5th best player in Australia?
3rd to 5th. There's a range.
You made up this 3rd to 5th stuff.
Well, no, this is just how I remember it, right? There was a lot of beer involved.
You had eaten a burger. That was the first time you'd ate that day, and you could tell because you're going a bit cross-eyed.
I've been drinking all day, and you saw me staring into the burger. And
I'm like, it's my time to strike.
but I made him a bet because I'm quite good at long-term planning, and without actually knowing how to build a list, my list has been built for me. Or really, any of the rules of Kings of War other than my 2 practice games. I haven't actually read the rule book yet. I was quite confident that I could place in the top 20%.
Now, top 20% with, 67 players I think we've got?
Yeah, we're down to 67. Lost a few recently from this particular event from dropouts and whatever else. And as we've mentioned earlier, next year we think we'll have 100 or so easy game. But tickets being what they are, we've ended up with 60-something, which is still going to be the largest Kings of War tournament in Australia this year, I expect, or at least last year.
He needs to place top 14.
Top 14.
Oh look, let's count how many players there are tomorrow and reassess. Let's not
can't
set
reassess.
numbers now.
So I thought
The bet has been
20%
made.
was a very bold bet, but also like kind of achievable. If he said top 10, I would have shook his hand real hard right then and there. But I did have to contemplate top 20%. What is this worth to me? I'd love it if he finished like 15th.
Just shy.
Yeah, just
Only
outside.
Too good. But there's a much stronger likelihood, let's be honest, that he'll finish 30th out of 67. So I thought, stop 20%, it is potentially achievable, because Viv's the kind of fucking loose unit that would just pull that out his ass. 5 games, there's a lot of good players in Australia, but he could just... Oh, 6 games, sorry, I apologise. 6 games, yeah. So
Fifth
he's
best.
got to be consistently solid, but not just solid, good.
He has to be good.
Yeah.
To get to the top 14, you need to be good.
You need to win at least 4 out of 6 convincingly, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, 5 out of 6 will get you in the top 15. Definitely, I reckon. But you really need... If you've only won 4 out of 6, you'd better have got some good points in there. And, if you're a 50-50, what are you going to feel after day 1 if you're 1 and 2?
Ye of little faith. Look, when, if Sean Connery's taught me anything, when you board a submarine, you need to reach optimal cruising depth. And,
Okay.
if that takes me 2 losses to do it, that's absolutely fine.
happy with
I
that?
will submerge later,
Okay, say so.
and I will submerge into the top 20%, all aboard that submarine.
I think
Well,
it's
lucky for you, there's no soft scores.
Yeah, wait, is there sports in this?
No, there's no sportsmanship.
Oh, yes.
You arsehole.
Andrew, you're still fairly fresh, I guess. You've been to one Clash of Kings before. Last year was your first.
Yeah, I think I did a similar thing to Viv where I'd played probably 3 or 4 games for last Clash of Kings. Since then, I've played a few of the local tournaments in Melbourne. I haven't got any better. I've been on a pretty mean streak of losses leading up to this, so not confident. I'm not aiming for top 20%. I think top 40%. I was going to say 50 then, but I want to aim high.
You can do it.
So top
your mate
40,
do it.
top 40% is my unofficial goal there.
Just hope you don't play me sometime in the event.
Oh yeah, yeah. Listeners may remember me from the last CanCon where Hugh. I think. Did you talk about any other games, or was it just you ragging on how you'd beaten the person who played 4 games of Kings of War?
That's the only time that you remember because it hurt you and wounded you so deeply.
Yes,
Scarred for life.
PTSD or something. So all right, I'll revise that. Top 40% would be nice, or I lose all 5 games except beat Hugh.
Okay, that seems like a reasonable goal. Unlikely, the latter, but no, I don't know. You did beat me on Wednesday a few weeks ago, but then that wasn't a real event. So we didn't mention what the actual bet was, did we? So if you finish in the top 20%, I have to pay for all your drinks for the weekend. So we've capped it at $100 a night after a bit of further debate.
Yeah, no, we needed to. Hugh can drink like an Irish dock worker.
Indeed. And Viv's not far behind me, especially once he gets on the bloody $30 whiskies.
Once he hits the
So
sauce, yeah.
In
Top
100
shelf.
Australian dollars for international listeners is, by most people's standards, a lot of grog. But, it wouldn't be unusual for us to go out in Canberra and fish out, well, I say us, Viv and I,
Yeah.
probably to smash out $200 in a night.
Yep.
So $100 a night, paying for both nights that we're staying in Canberra, both Friday and Saturday. Sunday obviously doesn't count because that would be a bad choice. So paying for your grog for the weekend if you get in the top 20%. And if you don't get in the top 20%, free drink is for me.
I like these odds.
All right, so how about we go through our lists? Andrew, let's go through yours. What are you running?
All right, so I'm running Undead, which I believe myself and 8 others. There's 9 total Undead players this
I think
CanCon.
that's the most...
Yeah, the most
highest
far
choice.
and away. 9 undead, 5 goblins, elves, and something else. So yeah, undead are a popular choice. I haven't really seen another list as I've been scrolling through that's too similar. Certainly a lot of Revenant Cav going on. I have a feeling I saw a list with 4 or 5 dragon type units, so that should be fun.
Something
So
that we
gets to-
were joking about last year that you should be taking.
Yeah, yeah. So my list. So I've got 2 regiments of revenants, a regiment of Soul Reaver infantry, 2 wraith troops, a revenant cav regiment, a Soul Reaver cav regiment, a horde of wights, Morgoth the Faceless, a necromancer, and a revenant king on undead great flying worm.
Morgoth no face.
Yeah, Morgoth has been a popular choice recently.
I'll describe this as what I call a bag of hammers list. So where people talk about having hammer and anvil lists or horde lists or whatever, this is a bag of hammers list. Everything is a hammer, with a debatable exception of Morgoth and the necromancer, who are pretty, good in their own way as well.
They're the ones that
Yeah.
are throwing
Well,
the hammer.
after-
the bag of hammers.
Yeah, they're throwing the hammers.
After 2 whole games of Kings of War, I feel like I'm an expert when I say the drain life into combat to then heal the unit that you're fighting is a giant punch in the dick.
It's good, yeah. I mean, he's definitely considered to be broken by some parts of the community of Morgoth. I actually
He's
personally
fine.
don't really believe that. I think he's
fine.
I think he's good in some matchups, and some really grindy matchups in particular, he can be really nasty. I actually think he's, in a way, even though the heals will give you a lot of value because your units are sort of really hard hitting and don't necessarily have a super high nerve, so healing them up has a lot of value as compared to healing up skeletons or something. I think he probably works better in more of a grindy list. If you plow through everything and then your opponent likewise just charges into unit and kills it, so he doesn't have as much ability to heal, then he loses a fair bit of his value. But he's still good.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to use my Revenant Cav and maybe even my Revenant King on the Undead Great Flying Worm to act a little bit as anvils, which maybe I should have just chosen something that's an actual anvil for that. But, oh, well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Yes, that's my list.
Did you have a
Do you know what I
plan
miss
of sorts?
about Warhammer here, just for a second, if you
Yeah.
don't mind me going on a brief tangent?
Tangent?
It's naming your characters. I mean, not everyone did it back in toward the end of 8th, certainly things had gotten a little bit too, I don't know, the convention moved away from that. But at least there was a time when everyone would name their characters. I still did it back in Warhammer in the day. Revenant King on Great Undead Flying Worm. It's a fucking mouthful, man. Can't we call him Angry Jeffrey, the Slayer of Worlds or something?
That's his name. He's been
He's
christened.
now Angry Jeff.
Yeah, Angry Jeff, Slayer of Worlds. So yeah, I have a bit of a rough plan here. The general strategy here will be the Revenants and Soul Reaver infantry sit in the middle with the Revenant Cav and probably Whites and Morgoth on one side, Revenant King and Soul Reaver on the other side, Wraiths located to suit. The plan is reasonably loose, and like I said, I haven't had a heap of success with it so far, so we'll see if by the end of the 6 games a better plan has developed, and
You'll learn by the end what's gone wrong.
yeah,
what you should
if
have
nothing
done.
else, I'll know what not to do. Or
I think it's a powerful list. I think it's a good list. My only concern is that I think that it is, I don't know, quite unforgiving. It doesn't have a lot of those sort of big old hordes with heaps high nerve that can do what they like, or cheap-ass regiments to sit on the back lines and just claim objectives and those kind of freebies. Like, almost everything in your army you've got to maneuver well, and if you outmaneuver your opponent and outplay them, it's a strong list and you should thump through them and do a good job. But if you make any mistakes, then you might find that you get quite punished for it.
yes, I'd agree. I've definitely found that. In the games where I've lost, I've thought there was 1 or 2 key mistakes that I've made, and then I was like, well, I don't really deserve to win if I make a key mistake like that. Other lists might
But some
be
lists
more
you can
forgiving.
make a few key mistakes and still come out with it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but not everyone can
If you're
play
lucky.
Abyssal Dwarves, so...
But Andrew, I have a real quick question. From a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you decimate?
As you know, Decimate is 1/10, so only the 1.
That's nah.
All right, Viv, keep going. What have you got? What are
All right,
you bringing?
well,
what are you
Viv,
bringing?
Since you're on the Decimate wagon, what have you brought along? So you said you had your list written for you, but really you...
Yeah, I had written a list just based on what he thought. Kind of said he wanted to play something a bit more defensive and shoot
And of
have
course,
people
the
come to
miniatures
him.
you had available because he's borrowing the army from
That's
you.
right,
isn't he?
yeah. And then he had a test game, and then we had a bit of a chat, and he's made some adjustments. Well, we discussed it and made some adjustments that he wanted to play with for this weekend, which is...
Well, I don't know if we want to go through the original list, but
No, we'll just go through what you've got now.
What I've ended up with is a horde of decimators, and I just to
Famous
clarify,
Abyssal Dwarf Band.
yeah, like
4 metal albums.
on that scale of decimation, they're a 10.
Any items
10.
on these guys?
No, items are for pussies. Who uses items?
Me!
Um,
Wait till we get to my list.
I
They're going to
figure-
be so sparkly with items.
So the core of this list has actually been built for me. I didn't pick the majority of the units. It was a part of the thing that Ben just kind of
I feel like there's
showed to me.
some backpedaling here.
However,
Yeah, that sounds like excuses.
However, no,
Why, I
he
saw
built
it.
me a good list.
He wrote you a good list, and
Yeah.
then you made it worse.
No, well, everybody is telling me that decimators are terrible.
They
but
are.
They're called decimators.
You know what? I'm starting to come around to your way of thinking about these decimators. I mean, they are decimators. I can't dispute that.
No, you can't. It's in the name.
So you got your Decimator Horde.
The reason I brought the Decimator Horde is we played one game and everything in my list just got immediately destroyed immediately. Like
Yeah,
just,
because you were playing me and you had all the wrong matchups, and I completely destroyed you.
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
because
Nah,
I was
nah,
teaching.
nah.
Like, to be fair, I was trying to go easy on you, teach you the game.
What?
It didn't work. It didn't
yeah,
work.
okay.
If that's
Teaching
not a
me
humble
the game
brag.
Some
by
bad luck at some
tabling
key
me.
moments, and
For sure.
But you deployed poorly. That was the problem with that.
Oh, no,
game.
absolutely. But
That wasn't your list that was the problem.
in my defense, I didn't know what my stuff did. And I didn't know what
It
yours
was,
No,
what,
it-
your first game?
Yeah.
You
I had no
deploying
idea.
poorly is 100% defensible. It was not your fault. If anything, it was only after we deployed that I kind of looked at it and realized maybe I could have given Viv some more tips in the deployment area, because I don't know, when I'm thinking about deploying my army, even though I'm teaching the game,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily thinking how should my opponent deploy his army or whatever, so that's on me that your deployment was as poor as it was.
But-
Not on you at all, because you were learning, and we learn a lot in that game, including what not to do.
Yeah, so I took the big chunky things and I ran them into the things with spears.
Hang on.
And then
You have to go through...
that didn't end well. But okay,
What
so
chunky
yeah.
things
All right,
are?
right. My list.
All
So
he's got is just a horde of decimals. That's the whole list.
He doesn't
I
care.
don't need any more.
Okay, so you got your Decimator.
Okay, yeah, I've got decimators.
What else you got?
Okay, 2 units of gargoyles and their troops. Yes,
How many
that's a
points
thing.
do they come in at these days?
85. There we go.
85 for some
Good unit.
flank.
Yeah,
Good
so
unit.
they've been exceptional in both of our games.
always will be.
And just from my fantasy days, chaff's super important.
What else you got?
Really,
Good
really
call,
useful.
Good call.
And then I got a regiment of abyssal half-breeds. I'm not 100% sold on these. Yes, they're punchy, but also they die immediately. So, again, that just might be a Kings of War thing. I have hang-ups from fantasy
No, but
Warhammer.
they're defense 4, 14, 16, so...
Yeah,
if
they
they're
do die
getting
quickly,
hit-
but they're fast and they hit hard. They can't have everything. They can't be like fast, hit hard anvils.
Yeah, fair enough. The Lesser Obsidian Golems, I absolutely love.
So a horde
I think
of those?
they're phenomenal. You can just kind of put them into situations and you know you're going to lose them, but usually they do enough damage and they draw enough attention so that you can position other things
Say
in
usually,
good
like,
places.
look at this way of talking. He's played 2 games,
Well,
one of which I
in
went straight through the
both
Obsidian
of my
Golems.
games-
So in the only game...
Okay, in the game that was actually a game that wasn't just within turn 2 Hugh had killed every unit.
And
in
really,
my
they're
army.
defense 6, fearless 17?
Yeah, they got flank charged by Soul Reaver Cav, so that's going to go through a lot of things.
Yeah,
Throwing
but
off dice.
they did the damage that killed Jeff.
They did kill Jeff.
All right, so you got
all that matters.
some lesser golem hordes?
Yep.
Horde?
Yep, lesser golem horde. And then I got a horde of abyssal grotesques. Another really solid punchy unit. I really, really like them. Probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in this list is not giving them +1 to hit. But I just
You came
really
down to
wanted
points.
my list to kind of function in a certain way so I at least understand how it works, having never really played this game.
Good call.
I was then told that heavy mortars were mandatory, and I was given 2. So, yes.
I painted them
mortars.
up and based them specially.
And then I got a greater obsidian golem. Look,
Yep.
I love big gribblies, and in terms of big gribblies, this one gribbly's real good. It ignores all the rules. It has Strider, so for
Bubba.
someone who doesn't understand the
For
rules,
those who-
it's really good.
Who don't know my greater obsidian golem, his name is Bubba.
Bubba. Okay. And crushing strength 3 with vicious also means that I can just ignore most rules when it comes to rolling dice.
And against defense 6, fearless.
I hit you and then I wound you. Yes. I've then got a Abyssal Half-Breed champion who was originally Barack Obama. I don't remember his original name.
Bracky Barker.
Yeah, that one. And his Bracky was good, but too many points. And I wanted to squeeze this particular unit in. The Supreme Ironcaster on Great Winged Half-Breed. So
he needs a nickname.
He can be Florence.
Yeah, Florence.
Riding the machine.
Sure. Florence riding the machine. Yeah, no, okay, fair enough. So originally I had an Overlord, I think they're called, Overmaster.
Had an Overmaster with wings.
Yeah, Overmaster with wings, and that was good, but essentially in every game I'm only going to use that guy as chaff, and he's really expensive for chaff. So I also had a Ironcaster.
Yep, just a baby Ironcaster with
the
Surge.
Surge was good, but again, because I'm shit at this game, I don't have the positioning skills yet or the kind of just game oversight for me to use something that has low mobility and have it in the positions that I need it. So putting him on a giant Flappy Bird, the Great Winged Half-Breed, means that I can kind of fill up my mistakes by flying him to where he's needed, and then I can cast the Surge. And I think that's really important for a new player is redundancy.
Only problem, of course, is that you need to be facing your unit when you're on a large monster as opposed to an individual in order to cast the Surge. So if you're facing your unit to cast the Surge, you may not be facing another unit. So he'll be useful. I was about to give you a tip. He'll be useful in the center of your army looking forwards.
Always got to remember about
That's not how I'm going to use him, but thanks for the advice. So at the moment he has Fireball 12 and Surge 8. So and
he's vicious with that Fireball as well.
Yeah, I paid for the Surge. And in the one game that I played with him, he was phenomenal. I know that
he has gotten a boost since version 2.
Yeah.
Which
well, I don't know that.
So the caster version, I've seen the fighty version a few times, and he's like nasty, like every Dragon Lord ever. But the caster version on the Great Flying Half-Breeded Creature of Doom or whatever, and the Horde of Decimators are the two units. Everything else seems standard. You know,
I got another unit of Gargoyles.
Nasty Abyssal Dwarves, 2 Mortars, because they're nasty as hell these days. This and that, your couple of Gargoyles. All of that seems like what I would call, you know, fairly staples of the Abyssal Dwarf list, which is a very strong list in general, as it's well known. But those are the 2 units that I'm interested in that are a little bit of a question mark. But, and I do say this in all honesty, Viv is much better than me at finding, on first glance at a game, finding some units that are like the hidden filth. So maybe
Diamonds
you know
in the rough.
something that no one else knows. I wouldn't be that surprised, even after only 2 games.
In my second game, I didn't know what's that thing that happens when you're weighted?
Disordered.
Yeah, disordered. So, yeah, that's a thing, and you've got to watch out for it.
It's not like
It's a basic thing.
Yeah.
it's not like either of those units are bad. It's just that the Abyssal Dwarf has so many good options.
Yeah.
Like a lot of armies. A lot of armies are like that. It's like, oh, this
Nothing
unit
is rubbish. In
10
the Abyssal
points too expensive as compared to its counterparts, so it never gets taken. It's that kind of thing. It doesn't mean that the unit's bad. You know
The only
what I mean?
thing I think I would question is probably the Hex caster, because Hex is rubbish.
Yeah, Hex is completely shithouse. And in fact,
Super shit.
I can confirm from recent tournament that Benson and I attended. Wait, did you attend that one?
Yeah,
You
the
did,
Mike.
We
Mike
went
one?
together,
Yep,
that
in
Mike
January.
con.
Yep.
And you went as well, right, Andrew?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Are you going to launch into a story about how you beat me at that, or?
Oh, no, I was going to avoid that, actually, but thanks for bringing it up.
Did you guys play in that one?
Yeah, we did.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I believe you hexed me in that one.
I did hex
That
you,
game?
didn't do much.
The
but I
gist
did do
of the
it.
tournament is
The point is,
both you and I did okay.
The only bit that matters about that tournament is that I took 2 hexes. I took hex on my...
Specifically for this tournament.
Yeah, for this tournament, to try it out. I took a hex on the Warlock and also took a hex on some other guy, the Hex
I
Staff.
told you it was rubbish.
And you're right, it was absolutely garbage. It was good in one game. That game was a game that it was good in because I stuffed up.
You get 18 turns out of 3 games, and it was useful in 1.
It was only reason it was useful is because I used it on what I later found out to be Wizard 0 unit, level 0 unit. which I
Yeah,
wasn't
so
allowed to
it
use
wouldn't
on.
have worked.
Because it was a wizard on a celestial thing.
Spellcaster tier 0.
And I said, is that a wizard? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, it's a wizard. So I'm thinking it's a wizard on a mount.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, sweet, I'm going to hex that motherfucker. And then he did a spell and did a bit of damage to him, and then I later killed it. So I was like, yeah, rat, hex totally worked. No, it was spellcaster tier 0, I
It should
later
have done
found out.
nothing.
So it shouldn't have worked. So the one time it was good.
It was
Hex
illegal.
is so bad. It's only good on tier 0 units. Anyway,
Yeah.
we can spiel on this later.
That's my rant.
So what
I'm
does
gonna
Hex do?
Hex is whenever... So you cast it on a spellcaster.
Doesn't matter, no one's going to take it.
On a spellcaster, it has to have a spellcaster tier, which most units are not. That can
So
cast
basically,
spells.
wizards that you take as a wizard have a spellcaster tier. Usually they're tier 1 or 2
Yeah.
or whatever. But units that can do spells, for the most part, so usually they're, special units that are, 0 to 1, or more commonly they're like a regiment of ice golems or what have you.
Or you drag them with your fireball or whatever.
Dragon with fireball, if those kinds of things. They're tier 0. And Hex specifically doesn't work on tier 0 units.
So a hex is supposed to, when you hit a spellcaster, whenever they successfully cast a spell, every success they take 2 damage. So surge 8, you roll. I got 6 for my surge. Great. Now that caster's taken 12 damage.
Yeah. Holy shit! So it's fantastic. It's fantastic with.
Oh my.
So in
With
theory, see that sounds great, but
Sounds
being
great.
able to hit someone,
And sometimes you'll play armies which have Bane Chant 2 and Bane Chant 3.
And it's
that's
like,
it.
what's the
And
point?
It's
Okay,
like, why
great.
even bother? It's you'd think it would be mainly good against undead and stuff, because you want spells that have a lot of dice to roll. So something like Surge is a great example, because Surges often have numbers of like 6, 8, 10, whatever else. But
or fireball.
the problem is they just either they cast heal on 2 dice or something, or they don't cast, or you don't hit them and the hex doesn't work, or there's a million other hoops
so
to jump through, and it's just not
you try
good.
to maneuver to get to a position to cast hex on it. I mean, it's got 30-inch range, great, but you need that line of sight as well. And then they have to cast a spell, which often it's like, nah, I'm just not going to cast Bane Chant.
So,
So
Hugh,
what it more often than not does is, if you get it in the ideal circumstance, they just go, it's not worth the risk, I won't cast a spell. So in that way, it's that's cool, right?
Yeah, you're
but
trying
you've
to deny
foregone
that,
your
but-
spell. That's the
Yeah.
best case scenario, and you've foregone your spellcaster's spell to stop their spellcaster's spell. So you better hope that your spellcaster is a cheap ass bag of dick spellcaster, and there's a good one.
When we get to my list, I'll
It's
show
like
you
an
it.
anti-Morgoth text. I feel like it's only good against
No
Morgoth.
faceless. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
anti-Morgoth. Anyway, we've been through 2 lists. This 20-minute preamble has gone
30.
for 30 minutes already. I think it's time to move on, don't you?
Yeah, it sounds good. I'll go on with mine because of all the items. So I'm playing goblins again, taking a bit of a different list to last time because of all the new units. And looking at the other goblin lists in Clash of Kings, it seems like it's going to be the most fun to play against because everything else seems to have hordes of trolls and mincer troops to the wazoo. So I have 2 Luggett Gang regiments. I've also got a Rabble Horde, and I've given them the Dragon Shard Shield. It's figured for 1 turn I can sit on an objective, make them defense 6. I've also taken a Fleabag Rider Horde with Pathfinder, because I keep finding that the regiment, it does okay, but just doesn't do enough. 12-14 nerve, defense 4, with only 14 attacks. So I
Sounds familiar.
get 1 sort of slap, but with the Horde I get 28 attacks. So hopefully I can do something with that. I have,
Caterpillar Potion comes bolted on, no doubt.
yeah, because of how wide it is. I've also just taken a more Beast Pack regiment there, sort of my chaff, but they're also not rubbish. I've given them Staying Stone, so it just makes their nerve 13-14, just to make sure they don't waver. I've also got 2 Mincer Mob regiments. I've given one of them the Brew of Strength to make him crushing 2 Thunder 1, and then the other one I've given +1 to hit.
Can you do me a favour?
Yeah.
If that unit
Mm-hmm.
that has the Staying Stone does not waver on account of the Staying Stone, can you just put like a little
I'll just mark
tally
it.
next
I'll just
to it or
note
something?
Yeah.
Because I'd love to know if... Because, I mean...
I mean, it's
when you
5
think-
points.
I know it's 5 points, and I have nothing wrong with the item. I think the item's actually useful item, 5 points, whatever, no dramas. But I really want to know if it happens. Because if it happens, say, 2 times in the tournament, sweet 5 points, right?
That's it's paid for itself.
Once, like,
yeah.
meh. It's still not bad, probably, even once
for
over
5
6
points,
games. Over 6 games, though, the other 5... So that's kind of 30 points in a way.
I'm just
the other
trying
5
to
games it didn't do anything.
trying to reduce the risk of it doing nothing because they're nimble. They can get out of the way,
Oh,
and
not-
if they're
I'm
staying there, then
Not
it's-
arguing with the choice,
yeah.
just really interested to see how it
if
goes
it works
for
or
the
not.
narrative.
Yeah. Yep. I've also taken a more pop launcher so I can give all my dudes some savage little puppies. Not for actual damage. 2 Goblin Blasters because Hugh loves them. And I've also got a smattering of heroes. The Flaggett, he's got a Loot of Insatiable Darkness. Kuzlo and Madfall. Magua and Juus. As well as a Wizard with the Inspiring Talisman. So I've taken both Living Legends and a couple more Inspiring Sources.
So Kuzlo and Madfall, can you remind us what... There's one that's the Skarsnik guy, right?
Yeah,
which one's
so
that?
the Magua and Juus, he's just a... guess he's kind of like a lord.
What, Juus?
Juus. J-O''OS. There's that
So
gap in between.
It's like juice with a pause.
Yeah, Juus.
Like red wine juice.
So he is 7 attacks with Crushing 2, hitting on 3s. Individual, Duelist, Mighty, Wild Charge D3 with Speed 6. So he's got Lightning 4 as well. So he's a bit of an all-rounder, but he's 150 points.
Yeah, he's like a vampire that is stuck on foot.
And only
basically.
12-14 as well. I don't think he's worth it, but I like
Yeah,
the
he's
figure.
a weird unit because in the right circumstances, he's great. Like if individuals, particularly for some reason, try to attack your backline, get in there, try to kill
eat up
your little
anything,
things. He'll gobble them. I mean, he'll do decent damage to anything. Don't get me wrong, but he'll do awesome against individuals because he's got duelist, right? So he'll smash individuals. But he's on a what? Is it a 40 mil bat? 50
Yeah,
mil
he's on a
base?
large cav base.
Large cav.
So 50
that's
by 50.
50. So he's on a 50 mil base, which means he's not he's nimble, I assume.
Yep.
Sorry, I know you just.
Well, he's individual, so that comes with
Oh, he's
it.
individual.
Yeah.
Oh, he's individual despite
Yeah.
the size of the base.
That's right.
Okay, cool.
So he can
That's
turn
cool.
around and snap things.
So he's flexible, and he's got wild charge as well. So you might get some suckers.
D3, yeah.
But if someone reads them carefully and goes, "Yep, individual wild charge," I'm not going to put any of my individuals near him. Then
Yep.
he's not going to get them. Is
No.
he? I mean, big old base.
If he didn't have Lightning 4, it'd be, what's the point? If I was to optimize this list, I'd put a king on a mount who would be cheaper and probably a bit more useful. But anyway, I've taken him because I did.
I still like him. He's cool. He might catch some noobs, but I feel like he's a bit of a skill cap kind of character.
And I think Kuzlo and Madfall, again, another interesting choice. He's a bit special. So this is the guy that allows me to do double dread because he's a wizard riding a lizard, whiz on a liz. And he's got an aura that basically anyone, even myself, is within 6, then their nerve is dropped by 1. And because it's not dread or shattering or brutal, it stacks with brutal, which I've got a fair amount of in this army. So I can do a neg 2 to your nerve. Ooh. So him nearby, getting hit by anything with my brutal, is got a good chance of getting rid of it.
Yeah, I like that. That's interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. He's a fun little character, and if you use him right, you'll be like, man, I did it.
And he's got Hex 3.
Hex 3.
Oh,
That
broken.
Hex is going off.
Have some of that.
He must be like 300-400 points then.
145.
Okay.
Bargain.
He's also got a weird enthrall. It's only 12 inches, so the lizard goes and slips something with its tongue. Enthrall 5, but that also does damage. I don't think I'm ever going to use it because I can charge. His nimble's like speed 8 Pathfinder nimble.
So since we're all naming each other's special characters, maybe your leader should be called King Gizzard. So he's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. What do you reckon?
Yes.
My Flaggett will be King Gizzard.
Oh, he's King Gizzard.
Yeah.
But you can't be the king if you're carrying a
Because
flag.
he's a living legend. He's Kuzlo. Kuzlo is the...
He's been
the
renamed.
wizard.
He's
He's
a
King
lizard
Gizzard.
Yeah. So he's King Gizzard now.
And who's the lizard?
King
wizard?
Gizzard's the other guy, the king with juice with his juice box rent.
Whoever the lizard
Magua.
wizard is King
Magua.
Gizzard.
I'm confused. You'll have to write it down for me.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my army. I don't have a real plan because I'm still kind of painting units as I go. And I'm starting to get a bit of a goblin army. And I didn't want to take the war machines because I did buy extra war machines, but I didn't want to take them just because people freaking out. But I think it looks cool. I like the look of my
Yeah,
units.
bit of this, bit of that. This is the
Yeah.
kind of army I like.
Yeah.
You know, bit of everything.
And what are you bringing with your rats?
All right.
Obviously
Ratkin.
rats, not undead.
So, unlike undead, the ratkin, I hear there's a plague sweeping the country that seems to be specifically affecting ratkin players. They've got a bit of a tummy bug. So, as a result, I think me and only one other bloke has turned up with ratkin for this
What?
tournament.
Is that all?
Is that correct?
I
I
shall double
assume
check.
that's why there's not many ratkin players because otherwise everyone would be playing them, right? I mean, what's you guys' excuse?
Well, I've been
Ratkin
painting
shortage.
yours.
ratkin shortage. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have been busy painting mine.
That said, I
painting
do want to
yours,
get some, like we said in the 2019 roundup, I do want to get some Ratkin units so I can make a, what is it, Ratkin slave?
Ratkin
list?
slaves.
Yeah.
No. Just use mine. It's fine.
But then you can't play them.
Anyway, I took a shock troop horde with heavy halberds and another shock troop horde with plague plots. Now, there's a reason for this. And the biggest reason, well, A, it's nice to have the flexibility on the table, a bit of this, bit of that. But also, I have a shock troop horde, which are, people will remember the old Skaven Storm Vermin miniatures with their big old heavy halberds. So that makes sense for that unit. And I had all these blight floating about because, unfortunately, in 3rd edition, they axed the blight. So they're not in the
For
list anymore.
now, they may make a return.
Who knows? They may make a return.
And I can just confirm there is only one other Ratkin player.
Indeed. Only one other Ratkin player. Probably a really good guy, I assume. Probably a very intelligent individual. But
Because of his choices.
Yeah, I mean, there's no... Yeah, it goes without saying, I suppose. Why am I wasting my breath?
Paul Van Eyck. I don't know if you've played him before.
Paul Van Eyck, great guy. Legend of the game. So... he is actually pretty... I actually do know who Paul is. Anyway, heavy halberds and the plague pot. So this was Mike's suggestion, actually. He's like, well, I'm like, I don't know what to use these.
Plague pots are
We've
too
got
good.
2 regiments of these suckers. And I'm like, well, what am I going to use them as? I could use them as standard warriors or something like that. These are the plague monkey kind of characters, but they stand out differently to the other warriors. Looks a bit weird. Don't get it.
Okay, so
So he's like, why don't you take them as shock troops and just give them plague pots?
yeah, so they're
So
still...
I'm like, oh yeah, because then they're plague troop dudes, and yeah, right on.
And it's still
So
got that kind
I
of
didn't
feel
give
from
the other
version
unit
2.
plague pots, at least in part, because it helps distinguish which unit's which, right?
Yeah.
You've got one with the plague pots and one with the heavy halberds, and
Yep.
it's pretty obvious
Makes
which one's which. Happy days. Anyway, so 2 shock troop hordes. We've got 2 spear warrior regiments. Which are probably the units I'm most dubious about. I've kind of got this theory that if I've got a phalanx unit in the middle, big old horde with heavy halberds, 2 regiments on the flanks with phalanx, hiding near trees or buildings or whatever else.
And Viv,
might be
normally
useful.
spear units, I mean, regiments with phalanx, you think, who cares, because they'll just get hit. But spear units have generally more attacks. So you're thinking, like, if they hit your shock troops, your spears can hit them in the flank and have
Potentially.
a
I
few
mean, they
more
only go
attacks
from
than
12 to 15 attacks, which is kind of mediocre. But if you hit the flank with 30 attacks, even on 5s to hit with no crushing, it could be okay, especially if you Bane Charm them or whatever.
Well-
So, I don't know. They're an okay unit. They're 105. My other thinking with them, as opposed to a regular regiment of clan rats or warriors, as it were, is that they are unit strength 3.
Mm-hmm.
So hanging out on objectives and daring cavalry to come at them seems like a more practical thing than perhaps a regular regiment, because warriors, which is my next unit, are only unit strength 2 and they come in at 85 points. And they've got plague pots in this case. And honestly, that's just because I had 15 points left over.
and you needed something on
And
something.
I want to give plague pots a bit more of a shot. I
Yep.
think they're a great thing to have, especially a tool.
I think it's one of the better
Yeah.
unique things for each army.
Yeah, I really like plague pots. Even though I didn't like losing the blight, I feel like it was worth it for plague pots alone. Like, they're just such a cool unit. Unit upgrade, I should say.
And for anyone who's not sure what plague pots are, it's a 1-use item that gives you ensnare and stealthy for a turn.
Yep, 15 points. Most of the regiments and hordes, sort of the standard foot rats, can take them. And yeah, stealthy and ensnare for a turn is pretty legit. Sometimes 1 turn's all you need.
Yep.
And sometimes I've found in my games so far with them, I've played about 5 games of the 3rd edition Ratkin, is that you pop them and your opponent just doesn't charge, and then you're like, cool, back to ground 0. At least I brought some time, you know. Like,
Or you put a horde of half-breeds and a horde of grotesques into 1 unit of them, and the core rat unit that costs sweet fuck all beats both. Like, that is actually
Beats or
good.
just
so
bounces?
what he means
bounces.
is shock troops when you have a...
Core. No, shock troops
Yeah,
are the
yeah.
elite unit.
When he
Oh,
has
okay, yeah,
one
so-
hindered unit and 1 not hindered unit goes into them, and then they get an additional -1 on count of ensnare.
That's not hitting anything.
Turns out they don't do that much damage, and then the unit holds.
No.
Especially when it's got rally 2 and
So, are
inspire.
you saying when something's
Yeah.
hitting on 6, they don't do damage?
Not as much. Anyway, we live and learn, and we move on to the Tunnel Runners Regiment, which is a nasty unit of cavalry. In fact, sorry, they're not. They used to be large cavalry. Now they're chariots, which is interesting. They got the same footprint, still heaps of attacks. Brew of sharpness I've given them. I
Yep.
find that makes them significantly more
Because
reliable.
normally they're hitting on 4s?
Yes, they hit on 4s normally. That puts them to 3s. Very helpful, especially since it means that if they have crushing 1 and thunderous 1,
Yep.
which means if they get impeded normally, they kind of do 3/5 of fuck all.
Yep.
Once you go down to 5s and you've only got crushing 1 for a hammer unit, you're not very interesting. But when
And
you're
I
on 4s,
found-
you still do okay.
I found that happens a lot with the grotesques. Like, if they get hindered, then they're just not doing anything.
Yeah, that's right. So giving them +1 to hit is an alternative to giving them the caterpillar potion.
Yeah.
And it means that if I can get them in the open, they really run over things. 24 attacks, hitting on 3s, does some work. We've got a weapon team, 2 of them in fact. They've moved up in points, so I'm not doing a Ratkin army list review as much as I'd like to right now. The mutant rat fiend I've taken as well in this list, so big old beastie who's just trying out.
Yep.
You know, only played him in one game so far, which is the game against Viv. I'm not sure what to expect from him yet. I do like that he gives rallying, and I do like that he gives...
He's got an aura, doesn't he? Like Radiance of Life?
He gives Radiance of Life,
Yep.
but it's vermin only. So you'd think that's everyone, but actually vermin keyword is just him and like the tiny util rats, the rat worlds.
Right, that's
so not the actual
disappointing.
troops.
So it basically just hits him.
So they're not vermin. Okay.
He's got
Yeah.
a rat worm, and he doesn't vomit out little baby rats.
Yes,
No.
one of his keywords is walking womb.
Delicious.
Typed wallacking womb on this
Wallacking.
on this army list, which I just read. So he's a wallacking womb. He's not afraid to use it. We've got a tangle in this list as well. Is now
Yep.
the new unit I'm trying out. To me, he's like similar to what I'd used the warlock for before, which is give him the inspiring talisman, stand behind my units, do some utility spells, bane chant.
Now that's a
bit of lightning.
shrine it's counted as?
It's a Titan size, but it's
Yeah.
only height 3. So it fulfills a similar role. It's a few more points, only about 20 or so more points. But he gives Aura Fury, which is sexy. He's indeed inspiring, of course, and rallying 1, and the larger base can help for that. Problem is, as I've found against Viv, if something lands behind you or moves behind you units, he's nowhere near as easy to hide as the Warlock.
Yeah.
So he's definitely more vulnerable than the Warlock. And you can also shoot over the units at him,
Yep.
which can be a bit nasty.
And you can do vice versa.
So I'm still not sure which is better, but it does seem useful. He's got regen 5 up, fearless nerve 14, vicious and melee, which doesn't matter because he's.
I will just point out though, like when Barack Obama was slapping your rat worm, like we just sat there regenning at each other for the entire game.
Yeah.
Well,
Barack
Barack has only got 6 attacks.
Yeah, but like both units were just unable to damage each other meaningfully. To be fair, my rat wound would eventually have toppled over him, but it took a while. Anyway, so yeah, that guy. But the interesting thing about the tangle is that for every unit within 6 inches, it's not every unit, it's like regiments and hordes or something. I can't bother reading it right now. But it gives you +1 to your spell, like the number of
And
die
what
that
spell has he got?
He's got Bane Chant 1,
Okay.
Fireball 10, Mind Fog 1, and Weakness 1.
Okay, so add maybe 2 or 3 to them.
Yeah, most times you'll be adding at least 2. More often 3, I think. So
Does
to
that
that
mean-
point, Bane Chant 4 is super reliable, even for me. Fireball... Sorry, it adds up to 3.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so-
for,
okay, up
for
to
the
3.
noobs in the room, you don't mean an auto win, you mean extra dice.
Extra dice.
Yeah, extra
Yeah.
dice, that's right. So Bane Chant 1's got a 50-50 going up, because you need 1 4 plus, right? Bane Chant 4 has 4 dice, and any one of which roll a 4 plus, you get it off. So it makes Bane Chant, Weakness, and Mind Fog very reliable, and also gives him a solid Fireball 13, or 12, or 11, depending on who's nearby, if needs be. So then, last of all, I've got good old Skuduk Suluk, Demon Spawn of Dew.
Mate, he needs a new name
Worst
as well.
name ever. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. It's just like they just did alphabet soup. And
Smash your
then
forehead into the keyboard.
I've also got a
Out
swarm,
comes the
like
name.
you, Benson. I got a swarm cry with a loot of insatiable darkness.
Uh-huh.
So he's
They've got some fabulous bards.
he's hoping to try
screaming
out for the
hate.
Decimators soon to act as their second guitarist.
But on a scale from 1 to 10.
How much does he decimate?
Yeah.
Well, good question. He's got 1 attack hitting on 5s.
That's a
That's a
low.
1.
That's not
That's
a
a-
1. I don't know what it is.
A decimate.
But he
I
plays a
guess.
mean
tenth.
loot. So despite my lack of Warlock, I do have 2 Bane Chants in the list.
Yep.
So that can be useful because the shock troops sometimes need a bit of help.
So how do you think you're going to go without the presence of Aubergine Stickman?
Old flame stick bro,
Yeah.
which was my enforcer on mount with the Diadem of Dragonkind.
So
I don't know. I'm going to miss him. I think I'm going to miss that.
Because
guy.
you also had a wizard that was really rubbish at casting, but great at hitting dudes.
Yes, I'm going to miss him too. He doesn't exist anymore. That was a Blight Lord.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, that's a shame.
What
Yeah,
about
it's-
your 3 assassins that came last CanCon?
Indeed.
I feel like this is just a rubbish list without them.
That was the CanCon before, wasn't it? Wait, did I come? I don't know. Anyway, there was a time that there was 3 assassins. Good old days. But yeah, sadly, the day of the assassin has passed for now. But I might miss it because I think he's a really good War Machine hunter. I think that's his only role in the new edition, to be honest. So I wouldn't mind getting him back in there sometime. But I don't know. This is a very elite Ratkin list for me. We'll see how it goes. trying something a bit different. I don't know. It seems reasonably powerful to me.
All right. Have we got anything else to say before we sign off?
No, I just want to say good luck to Bentham and good luck to Andrew for tomorrow. I hope you guys do really well.
And yourself, you? No Viv? No luck to Viv?
No luck at all.
Yeah, I'd like to say good luck to Bentham.
Thanks.
No worries.
All right, so we're going to sign off there for, well, I guess it's day 0. And we'll go for a break, and when we return, it'll be after day 1, and we'll...
Hopefully we won't be depressed tomorrow.
relay what's happened. All right, we'll see you guys shortly. And we're back. So, unlike what we said before, we were going to come back at the end of day 1. What we've done is just wait until the end of the tournament. So we have had 2 games of, 2 days of Kings of War, 6 games, and the results are in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the games, just doing the highlights for each person. So hopefully it's not too long of a second half here. What we'll start off with is, we'll just go straight into round 1. We'll just go around the table here. So the scenario was smoke and mirrors. So I'll start off with myself. So playing as goblins against Luke, and he was running Empire of Dust. Now he hadn't played very many games of 3rd Ed, but a decent amount of 2nd. And for the most part, it was pretty simple for myself, just because of the large win I got on this one. But a lot of the time it was, he just couldn't roll his dice well enough, and I did. So a decent amount of goblin luck on this one. The last, I think basically the only thing I'd left was just that damn Idol of Shobik that doesn't get taken off the table ever. And because he only had one thing left, he couldn't really get any of the tokens, and I did. So it was a fun game regardless. He was a very, very nice fella to play against. There were no rules disputes. It ended up being a 20-1 my way.
I don't mean to sound like a big deal, but I've killed an Idol of Shobik before.
Well, whoop-de-doo.
Do you get bonus points for that? Or
I killed it with an assassin.
Rubbish.
Well, I don't
Surely,
buy that.
surely not.
So this is...
Okay, I held it up with an assassin and charged it in the flank with some tunnel runners.
Well,
but
there you go.
the assassin was there.
He was the key by holding it up. But you can tell the difference in what happened here. He killed 395 of my goblins. I killed 1455 out of the 2,000 of his stuff. So, bit of a swing there.
Nice.
How about you, Hugh? How'd your first one go?
Round 1 I played a guy called Chris Earl. He was a nice bloke. Brand new to 3rd Ed. Similar to your guy, I think. Quite a bit of 2nd Ed, so he told me that he played, but not that much 3rd Ed. Playing a bit of Ogres. So we had interesting little army. He had a bunch of old ancient mammal models and stuff that he'd converted up for his dudes to be riding. So they would be this is a chariot lord on this crazy mammal super sloth thing and stuff.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. I kind of liked his interesting different miniatures and stuff. But yeah, 20-1, same as you. kind of stomped over poor old Chris, to be honest. 8-0 on the VPs. And this was the bluff scenario, which I love. But he hadn't played the bluff scenario before. Admittedly, I'd only played it once, but it's one of those ones that I felt like it was a bit of a learning curve getting into 3rd and being brand new to it. And yeah, I don't know, not a huge amount to say about this particular game in that just sort of everything went more or less to plan. I lost a couple of units in the middle, which I felt was a little unfortunate, but it didn't really matter.
Right.
Still just got all the things.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And, all right, story of the game for this one. Man of the match, and to give you my MVP, was a regiment of spear rattos who were spectacular. They killed a unit of goblin just wolf riders on the charge when they were hindered, so they needed 6s a hit, just took them off. And then they charged and killed a ogre battle standard bearer on chariot and a wizard, an ogre wizard, whatever the ogre wizards are called, shamans or something.
Warlock.
Yep.
So who did this? Who killed all this?
Just spear regiment, 105 points of win. Just kept slaying dudes all game. They were just stabbing away, 5s to hit, getting more hits than they should have and just kicking goals.
All right.
So MVP.
Good start. What about you, Viv? How'd your first game go?
My first game is against someone's name I cannot remember. And unfortunately, his name on the app/website is Angry something.
Artists.
Angry artists.
So we'll call him Angry.
Yeah, so everybody was telling me that, his list is just mince mobs and trolls. You're in trouble. Mince mobs do all the damage.
This is 6 Mincer mob troops plus 3 hordes of trolls and minces and other stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah, certainly a
few other things in
very
there.
cookie cutter army, isn't it?
And I just want to point out that he came 13th in the end, right? Which is exactly where he needed to be in the top 20%.
Indeed. So we can't review yet, I suppose, the result of the bet, but you didn't come precisely 13th.
I didn't. No. However, in this game, the Mincer mobs are only movement 5. And honestly, this is my 3rd game of King's War ever, so I had no idea what they were anyway. And it didn't really matter, to be honest. I didn't find many of them in the combat.
Humble brag.
He moved forward, and I was kind of lucky with my heavy mortars, scoring like 1 hit on each of them, but then doing around 5 or 4 wounds, and then rolling really high on the nerve. But the best thing I've ever done is just like the cheeky fireball where you get like the 2 hits and then you roll, the 11, and it's just like, oh well, there goes another one.
Are they inspired? Nope. See ya.
Yeah, and they were just never
Because
inspired.
they're 14 nerf. Like, you
Yeah,
need
I
to
know.
Fearless
do...
14,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Fearless 14, are
Yeah.
they? They
Yep.
don't,
Yeah,
they don't
they're
even waver.
fearless.
Nope.
Why do they not waver?
I don't know.
They're like gobos. There's a lot of things I've noticed in this edition, and it may have been the case in second as well, and I just didn't think about it as much. Probably was. But there's a lot of fearless units that feel as though they shouldn't really be fearless.
Well, I think the goblins riding a mincer or steamroller gives them confidence.
But they're fucking goblins still. Like, get confidence, my ass. Like, they're not an undead, fearless, emotionless creature. They're a gobbo. Maybe the steamroller thing just keeps on steaming on and they can't
I
stop
feel
it
like
or
that's
something.
the case, right? They have zero control on it other than go forward. So even if they were terrified, it doesn't matter. The mincer does the work.
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't break.
it
Maybe it
minces
just
along.
gets
It just keeps
destroyed or
going,
something.
yeah.
Still, there's a lot of examples of this. Fearless. What the WTF fearless?
Yeah. But so my list is really good against this. I've got ranged units, so the Decimator Horde, and then the 2 heavy mortars, and then also a 5 or 12 on my flying half-breed.
The Supreme Ironcaster.
Yeah, the Supreme Ironcaster. And with my 2 units of chaff, I could chaff them up really well, and then charge into certain positions, and everything in my list will kill one of them almost guaranteed.
And even though your decimators have 12-inch range, you still outranged the charge range.
Yes,
of
which brings us to what the people really want to know, Viv, because we don't care that you
yeah.
killed all these mincer mobs. How much did you decimate?
Oh, well, from a scale from 1 to decimate, at least 4 decimates.
So, did you kill, say, 3 troops with them? Because that'd be
no.
good,
So
I reckon.
the other half of his list is just troll hordes, right? So they killed 2 mincer mobs and a troll horde.
That's pretty sick. That's a lot of decimation.
Oh my god,
That's
decimated.
more decimation than I think anyone was expecting except Viv. So well done there.
Yep.
Yeah,
No, you were
they're
expecting,
phenomenal. They're so good. All tournament, people are like, what the fuck are decimators? And I'm like, oh, you're about to find out.
Well, credit
how
where
did- how
credit's
did that
due. It
end?
seems like they did decimate this game.
So that ended up 18 my way.
18-3.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew.
So I played Alan Schultz with his Northern Alliance. Had a couple of Snow Troll hordes and a couple of Human Clansman horde, Ice Naiad horde. I pretty much held up one entire flank by flapping my dragon around and never charging or being charged, but just the threat.
Just glaring at him.
Yeah, held
I
it
love
up.
that about flying monsters, right?
Yeah. I dropped the Smoke and Mirrors bluff tokens. I had all of them on one side, and Alan had split his up. So I was just concentrating on the side where I knew I had all 4 of my victory points. And as the game progressed, you flip over the tokens, and we found out where they were. In the end, his big hordes were just sitting on
Yeah, didn't
2
you say
zeros.
you had like one unflipped token each, and if you mathed it right, if you counted the other tokens, you could see that, hang on, they should be zeros.
Well, yeah, Alan, this was the first time he'd played this scenario. And at one stage where he had the 2 token flipped over and both 1s flipped over, I think he was still trying to work out what the other 2 were. Sorry, that sounds. I'm
Maybe you just forget.
Yeah,
'Cause
and in the
sometimes
heat of
units
the
are on top of
battle
tokens.
as well. But either way, he said something like, "Oh, I'm not, I want to flip them to find out what they are or something." And I thought to myself, "Nah, you think this through. You know that you shouldn't be sitting on them." But he did, and in the end, I got up 6-1 in the victory points, and which turned into a 16-5 tournament point victory. I reckon Alan, he won't make that same sort of mistake, so to say,
Not for that
again.
scenario.
Yeah, so I'm glad to cash in on his intro to smoke and mirrors scenario.
All right, so that's the
Nice
first
one.
round. Everyone winning.
So we all cashed in on the smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, that was good.
All four of us.
Go team.
Team Direct Misfire, kick and goals.
So the next round 2 was Rays. So you're starting with me again. I was against Master Clint Richards and his Night Stalkers. Yeah, I didn't think I'd do too well just because he was speed 6 minimum, crushing 2 and really fast. So he'd get the charge and probably would smash anything that he touches. So trying to be as cagey as I could here and delay as much as I could. I took off something surprisingly, but then I'd have like a regiment of luggets into one of his just large infantry characters for 2 or 3 rounds, doing 1, maybe 2 damage each round, and then wavering, and then the luggets dying. So they couldn't kill a large infantry character. But otherwise, I did what I could and ended up with a 4-17 loss to Clint.
Fair enough. Clint's a
Yeah.
very good player.
Yeah.
I believe he came 3rd overall in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep, powerful player indeed. Out of a field of... We ended up being 67?
65.
65. A couple of people pulled out one day.
Illnesses
day
and
2.
whatnot.
I don't know, whatever. Yeah, nice big field. Clint did very well indeed, so no big surprise that he managed to get on top of you there. My round 2, I played Andrew. Totally kicked his ass. No big deal. He's still sore from it, actually. Oh, wait, sorry. That was years ago.
I'm not better.
I'm just bringing that up just for Andrew. No, second round, I actually played a guy called Adam Story, I believe his last name is. Is that correct?
Yep.
I wrote down Adam. So, interesting game. He was playing a very powerful undead list. Definitely, because I've been thinking about undead lists, of course, having recently played mine, and thinking about how I could make it better or worse. I reckon he's got it just about down to a T for about as strong as it possibly could be. And of course, there's different ways to play, and it's not like his list was perfect in every way, but definitely a strong list. So 2 units of race, +1 to hit and elite, 2 units of whites. Sorry, other way around. The race, so that I always get the fucking race. God damn it.
Both are WRs.
The 2 troops of wraiths and 2 units of whites, regiments, hordes, whatever else with stuff. Okay, I'm stuffing this up. The list was good. Okay, Morgoth, etc. It also had 2 hordes of revenants. And what I found in this game was, if this was the game where I rolled like a bit of a potato. I accept that I was due this game. I've had a number of tournament games recently where I just haven't had that game where you roll shockingly the whole game. It wasn't a 1-1-1 game or whatever. It was just... And it wasn't shocking across the board either. There was plenty of good and bad rolls. But specifically, my nerve rolls just consistently were a bit below average, and it cost me so hard. So, like, repeatedly, I would have his Revenant Hordes on, like, 15, 16 wounds, whatever it is, and I'd need 6 with a reroll and fail. It's not that unlikely to fail at 6 with a reroll. I accept that. But I would do it every time. And then it'd be 4 with a reroll, and I'd fail that too. And then... What have you. So there was a few moments there where it was a really close game and it was hard fought. We both got 2 of the raise points quite quickly. So then it was just going to be down to the one in the middle. Like we kind of both knew it was always going to be. We weren't going to get the third, but our armies were sort of wheeling around one another.
Too far away.
So if you can imagine that it just wasn't going to happen. The way we positioned was such that we weren't going to get that third objective. So it was always going to come down to the one in the middle, and we had a very close fight, but I just fluffed those nerve rolls one too many times and came out on top. But I had a chance to rescue it. I got my Demon Lord into the flank of his horde of Revenants, and then probably my worst roll of the weekend occurred. So 26 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. They had about 10 damage on them already. Seems pretty good, right? It seems like this is going to work out.
The punchline.
He hit, I don't know, a sensible amount of times and then rolled like 8 1s to wound out of the bucket of dice that I had or something. Still did heaps of wounds, still needed like a 4 to break and didn't. And so because of this, it wasn't a double 1 exactly, but it was more or less the same thing.
Low, yeah.
Because of this, he then was unable to reposition, which meant that not only did the Horde survive and go on to cause me grief later, like for the objective, but it meant that the Demon was then unable to run onto the objective and potentially guarantee me to win, or rotate, face the Wraith charges, and then win it another way. Anyway, suffice to say, it wasn't great. But this wasn't all down to my dice rolls. Adam played really well. Really good game, tight game, close game. But this was the tournament game that I'd probably been overdue, where die rolls in key moments really cost me a lot.
Yeah.
And it swung it the other way. And then had he rolled those key moments the other way around, it would have gone the other way. It felt like a draw and was instead, I ended up getting tabled. And I've never been tabled in King's War before. I think this is the first. Might have happened before that I don't remember, but yeah, that's
that one
it.
out.
I mean, I've certainly been close to being tabled lots of times,
Yep.
but yeah, this was a straight up 2,000 points to the old Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was the opposite of my round one, where I got the tabling.
So how did that end?
That was a...
Did you get anything?
16-5.
16-5. Okay, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, definitely good. I was way behind on attrition, but he was only one up. Because we were both even on the objectives, it was just the one objective in the middle that decided for 3 victory points to 2.
All right, Viv, who were you up against?
My second game was against Undead.
Yeah.
I was playing Donald Neville. And again, because I'm really new to the game, I don't really know what most stuff does. So he sat down his list, and his list was basically just hordes of skeletons and then hordes of Revenant Cav. And then lots of little Revenant troops. And then a spellcaster with Surge. And then a weird giant that's not a giant because it's only height 3. I don't
The
know what it's called.
Gorblight.
Yeah. So I looked at his list and I'm like, okay, you got 3 things that hurt. Oh, also there may have been a zombie troll in there as well. So you got 3 or 4 things that like might hurt. But the Revenant Cav, I think Andrew, you put it this best when you said they're mobile anvils. They're not mobile hammers. They just don't do damage. So I looked at his list and I'm like, all right, you have no damage. You got nothing. So I kind of just took apart his pseudo hammers, and then he actually had no damage, and then I took all his toys off, and that was the game.
All right, and how did that one end?
That was there was nothing else really to say. Like that was that. That's how the game ended.
And what was the score?
21.
Another decent victory.
21, yeah. So,
Almost perfect, not quite.
so Viv's in the lead.
Doing very well.
From maybe not the whole event, but up there, and certainly leading Benson and I from what you know so far. And I'm thinking, maybe you didn't put my money in the right space here. But
Third
but
game
still,
will get him.
I felt comfortable. It's only game 2. It was only game 2, and Viv's in. He's airshipping. He's doing the opposite of what's it called? Submarine.
So the submarine I planned on boarding, turns out it's got wings. And
It's a dirigible.
I forgot all of my strategy. And I was like, in that first game, I looked at his army and I'm like, no, I can crush this. Fuck the submarine.
Yeah, exactly.
I think everyone was expecting that of you, Viv.
All right, Andrew, what's up?
So my second game was against Daniel Bird. He was playing League of Rortia. I remember a few things from this game particularly was that I was really happy with how I positioned myself around his war machines. I think he had 2 of the short-range volley gun ones and a couple of cannons. But I was able to position around lots of blocking terrain to keep myself a bit safe from that.
Nice work. The volley gun ones in particular are nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, the cannons are good too, and such long range it's difficult to avoid. But the volley guns, yeah, you gotta play smart so they don't blow your face off.
Yeah. So I hid from them and then charged a few things. And once I charged, obviously he wanted to countercharge, and so was in combat, and that sort of went well. We did a similar thing to you, Hugh, in that I got 2 of my raise points quite early and gave up on the third, and so did Dan. Came down right at the end to the turn 7 roll. So end of turn 6, I've done a reasonably clever surge play into the flank of some chariot that gives rallying, which seems pretty good. Oh, P.S. his army was beautiful, really well painted. And so I was up. I had the middle one. It would have been 3-2. The roll comes out. It's a 5. In come those Stormwind Cav or some Cav that I hadn't quite got rid of. Yeah, straight through my dragon, and then he has 1,000,000 unit strength to my single troop of wraiths or something left.
Well done.
The old turn 7 roll. Sometimes that's just the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
But it must have been a good close game.
This was probably my favorite game of the whole weekend because it was so close. To be honest, he probably played slightly better. So I'm not upset that he won, but also I'm a little bit upset that he won.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you got to play for turn 6. And it's funny that you say, I've played a couple of games against Dan and played a very close matches with him in general. Really great games as well with Dan. Like close, just tight, thinky games, cagey games, that kind of thing. But good cagey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but you got to play for 6. Playing for 7 is
You play for
unless
6
you have
and
to.
hope to
Obviously,
hope for
sometimes
7
you're just like,
if
oh
you
well,
need
the
it.
position is such that I have to play for 7. But you should be playing for 6 is the smart play. Obviously, if you can play for 6 and 7, that's even better. But 6 is guaranteed. 7's 50-50.
Yeah. I was in the position where I was playing for 6th and knew 7 would be a write-off.
Yeah,
Like,
I've been there before, yeah.
Yeah, it was... I was in such a position that it was 50-50 for both of us. Someone has to win. So
Fair enough.
that ended up a 15-6 loss for
Okay.
me.
All right. Last game of day 1, we had Invade. So I was up against Josh Angel, another master. Seems like we play every tournament, and it's usually pretty close. No exception on this one. He was playing Orcs. He had a couple of hordes of the Long Axe and a whole bunch of more axe dudes, dragon and war drums to back them up, and a couple of other things. One thing I was surprised that didn't work for him, he had like the Berserker Orc Hero, a Man Splitter I think it's called. It doesn't have Duelist, so 6 attacks, and you think it's kind of designed to cut people up. It had wings, flew into my wizard, only did a couple of wounds and didn't kill it.
Some of the Orc heroes are surprisingly underwhelming. You think they're going to be really nasty. Even that 230-point special character Orc guy, like he's
Whip,
just
was it?
okay. Like he's
Gakamak.
yeah. I was
on
calling
twos.
him
Yeah.
Guacamole or something in our game because I couldn't remember what the name was.
Well, Josh, because we always have close games, and it was the last game of the day, he was keep saying, "Oh, do you want to just call it a draw, 10-10? We'll just call it even." I thought, nah, I think I've got this one. I think I can out grind you. Ended up that way. I was able to outcharge him and kind of sit around. And one thing of note, Hex worked.
Oh yes,
I was able to get 4 wounds, or might have been 6 on Whip the Outcast. That's all I ever did with Hex for the entire tournament.
Oh, spoilers.
So did you try to use Hex throughout your games in general?
Yes, often it would be the army has no wizards and it's just spellcaster 0.
Yep.
And other times it was they're just too far away or I can't see them.
I don't think it would be broken at all if it just worked on Spellcaster 0, do you?
No, not at all. Because you can only do it once and then they have the option of doing it or not.
Anyway, I'm right there with you on that particular whinge wagon.
Yeah. But it was pretty close. The attrition difference is only 105 points, so very even on kills there. We killed about half of each other's army, and I ended up with the win 14-7 on that one. It was a good game.
I like playing Josh. He's got more energy than anyone has a right to.
Game 3, and he was still bouncing.
Yeah.
He says he's tired, but it doesn't show.
No, he's just, yeah.
I watched the end of that game, and I don't think he stopped talking the whole time.
Yeah, he goes at a million miles
that's
an hour,
Josh.
Josh.
Yeah.
In his defense, though, he keeps his clock going while he's talking.
Yeah, no, he's
Like,
It's
Make
nice and relaxed.
Make no mistake, this is not anything negative. He was great. He was great to spectate.
Yeah, he's entertaining.
Always have a
sure.
good game with Josh.
I mean, he's a frothing lunatic, but gotta love him. Anyway, game 3. So for the odd Hoosie, we were playing up against Ben Leopold, who was playing elves, who are frequently my bane in the very rare circumstances in which I play elves. I do tend to struggle against them with the Ratkin. Lots of shooting against a lot of very low defense stuff.
Did he have a lot of shooting in this list?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, as best as I can recall, at least, he had a Horde of Sea Guard, 3 scout units of shooters, which are very reliable little guys, a dragon breath weapon, a bolt thrower.
Okay, so a decent amount
Plenty
compared
of
to most.
Yeah, plenty of shooting.
Yeah.
Not like, it wasn't like a super duper gun line, but heaps of shooting. 2 regiments of the cavalry, which are really nasty, the elf cavalry. Like, they're not poxy silver helms. You got to think of them as dragon princes if you're going old school. They hit pretty hard. So Ben forced me into being a little cagey with my longer range things because I was scared of his cavalry. Sort of baited him into charging some phalanx rats on the other side for a little bit just to hold him up. Not because I thought he would lose the fight, but just to hold him up for a while. But Ben had a few pretty impressive rolls. Like, he would admit this entirely, I'm sure, because he was doing so during the game, but he had a few, like, 10 hits, 10 wounds on 4+ to wound, and things like that. Like, a lot of 4+ rolls going around where he wasn't rolling consistently well all throughout or anything, but there was a few times where he really spiked. Like, for example, charging the phalanx rat troop and getting, like, 10 hits, 10 wounds. And just like, well, I guess they're dead, but they probably shouldn't be and stuff like that. That was happening a little bit, but wasn't meaningful. It was just impressive to see those huge 4+
numbers,
rolls really coming out.
Yep.
I felt like I was going to lose for sure about the first 3 turns because I was getting shot off. Like 2 troops of those Elven Rangers, I think they're called or something. They got Vanguard and they scout and shoot quite competently, and they're quite reasonable in combat as well. They can strike okay. They just beat my shock horde by themselves. They just went, I'll shoot it for 2 turns, back up, shoot. Might have been 3 turns, probably was 3 turns. Got it up to like a dozen wounds or so, and then charged it in the front and killed it. And I was like, wow, that was legit. Admittedly, they did have an elf prince help them in that combat, but that was like only a couple of wounds different.
Yeah.
Didn't actually matter.
Yeah.
And they double won it. They killed it convincingly. Like, got it to the point where it needed double ones, if that makes sense. But didn't roll the double ones and took it off. And I'm like, man, I was just like approaching it confidently, being like, well, sooner or later I'll get to charge one of them. Give them no dramas. I'll take a bunch of wounds. Won't kill me. No dramas. Not so.
Lesson learned.
So I lost that fight. But yeah, I thought I was going to die for sure. But eventually I basically charged through the Withering Hail of Fire and came out the other side and just chewed through his units.
Yep.
So attrition-wise, I got up by a small amount, 1280 versus 1070 it was. Mm-hmm. So I did end up getting up toward the end. I got the vast majority of my points in the last couple of turns, where he'd been getting his in the first, as is the way with gun lines and stuff, I suppose, or the way the game played out at least. But I just had more unit strength than him. He had a lot of like little troops of shooters and stuff like that, and I had just a decent amount of unit strength. So I ended up going up 10-5 on the objectives. I had 10 unit strength to his 5.
Yep.
And we both quickly realised in the last couple of turns, like, there was no sensible way that he could get that back. Because he could come back over to his side, if that makes sense, to try to fight those units and potentially kill them. But then he loses the unit strength on the other side. So it's kind of like, oh, well, we'll just...
Part and parcel.
We'll just stand there and shake hands and call it a 10-5. So 16-5 win. Yep. Minor win after a minor loss, which put me at the end of day 1 on a big win, a small win, and a small loss, I guess. So slightly better than 2 and 1, I suppose you'd put it, points-wise. Not too shabby.
All right, Viv, how'd your round 3 go?
So I'm slightly worried now because my plan to submarine and avoid good players.
You're just putting more helium in that dirigible.
It wasn't working. I was sitting at, I don't know, some ridiculously high point.
Don't fly too close to the sun.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right. I can see your wax wings
Icarus.
melting over there.
Yeah, and I came up against...
I see it melting.
the myth.
Viv!
No, look, this hot air balloon just filled with my arrogance could only go so high.
The hot air from your arrogance.
It's funny because it's true.
Thanks, Hugh. You can tell that like everybody's so sympathetic about my tournament journey. Everybody's just like, oh no, I feel so bad for you, Viv. No.
Yeah, like I've said before, I was proud that you were doing well with my deliciously painted army.
Oh yeah, no, the army.
I had conflicted feelings because I was like, on the one hand, I want my homie to do well.
My Abyssal Dwarves.
On the other hand, I've got to bet hoping that he doesn't do too well. So I'm like, I wanted you to do well, but not too well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So unfortunately, eventually I am going to play people who know the rules of the game. And I haven't read the rulebook yet, so I was slightly concerned. and his list, a reoccurring trend for all of the people I played is that they just took 2 units and then repeated it. So I don't know, I don't really like that trend. Kings of War players, can you stop?
What did you take? 2 units of gargoyles, 2 mortars?
Yeah, but then everything else is single.
Okay.
So
2 kinds of golems.
No. They're very different units. But so his list was butchers and reavers. That's it.
This is Clint, yeah?
Yeah, Clint.
Yeah,
Clint's
so this
list.
is the fella I played in round 2.
Yeah. So it made it
Butchers
real
and
easy
fiends.
for me because I'm a scrub and I only had to learn 2 things.
Yeah. It does make it easier when you don't have many units to face.
Absolutely.
By contrast, my 3 opponents had all had totally different units, really. Go figure.
So I didn't really know what to do in this one. All I knew is his unit strength was like 1 billion and my unit strength was like none. And I kind of needed to figure out a way to do this. And when I started deploying, because he had so many drops as well, he was always going to out-deploy me.
Yours is an elite army. You only have 11 drops, which is...
And the second he saw me
small.
put the decimators right in the middle, he was like, all right. And he fully deployed on either flank, completely leaving the middle empty. And everything in his list moves 6 or 8.
6 to 8, yeah.
So it's quicker than my army for sure, and he has a lot more punch than my army absolutely has. And then he had a few characters running around, and honestly, I still don't know what the characters do other than they punch and they move.
That's pretty much it.
really
They're
far.
nimble and punch.
Yeah. So I foolishly kind of played... I deployed not great. I still put things on the flank where he went really heavy, and I'm like, nah, I shouldn't have.
No, you're just sacrificing those.
Yeah,
then.
exactly. And that's what I realized. The half-breeds and the grotesques and the hero, I just realized at that point, all I need them to do is hold. So I can wreck the other flank where he's weaker. And that's basically how the game worked. So I put the half-breeds right up. He wrecked them. He put a character straight, just beelined for one of the mortars. Also, my mortars didn't hit once this game because they're only hitting on 6s, right? So they did
Stealthy.
nothing. Yeah, so the Night... What are they?
Night Stalkers?
Night Stalkers, yeah, I feel like they're a good list against mine, just because I can't hit them and they beat me in combat and they're real quick.
Yeah.
So I
that's fair.
was slightly concerned because even my Devastators,
Decimators.
yeah, that one, they're
I just
hitting
feel like
on
I'm just
five.
correcting you all this.
really
It's the
ruins
one
the
unit that you love. You can't even remember what they're called. Get it together.
Yeah, okay. The dwarfs. the dwarfs were hitting on 5, so you know they weren't doing that great. But it turns out that they're really good in combat. 25 attacks on
They're still
4s.
4s, nothing.
Yeah, but all of the Night Stalker stuff has like lowish nerve.
And lowish defense.
Yeah. So it turns out that they're really good at killing butchers that get a bit crazy,
I
or
wouldn't
heroes
say they're
that get a
lowish.
bit crazy.
The butcher regiments are feel as 15, defense 5.
Yeah, but that's probably the exception. Like the butchers are like the one tough unit, at least when
And he
when
had
I was
a
playing
whole
them.
bunch of butcher regiments and then a couple of butcher hordes as well. And even the fiends are like 16, 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one really lucky thing happen on my left flank. He put probably 4 or 5 units into the big
grotesques.
Yeah, the grotesques. Thanks. he put a lot of things into the grotesques, and
You've had 6 games with this army.
I don't know. All the
What are
names
the
flow
damn
into
names?
one. The extra punchy cav. So he put 1 billion units into it. He did like probably 40 damage, maybe even more. And yeah, I got the double one.
No!
So
Feels bad.
So
Well, not for you,
I
maybe,
actually sat there and I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. Like I'd never experienced a double one yet. So like I was just
A positive
empathizing.
double one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my first positive double one, and I'm like, wow, that sucks.
I
and that meant
understand
that
why Spoon quit.
like they could just come back, and then they killed one of the Reaver units. I think that's what they're called. But it also meant that like I got one whole more round of shooting with the Devastators.
Decimators.
Thank you. And so they could shoot in more and just weaken more shit. And it worked really well because he kept on just throwing heroes at the Decimator unit. And the Decimator unit was always like, okay, that hero's now dead. Okay, now that hero is dead. So they're just a really good shooting unit that also fights well in combat and has a ridiculously high nerve and isn't that expensive. Like, I just think they're
260
really good.
is not cheap.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, sure. But I feel like for that price, they're
So how did that game end? Like, what was the score on that one?
Well, he wrecked that flank, I wrecked the other flank, and the center survived. So in the end, I got 1,500 points and he got like 600 or something. So I absolutely devastated his army. But because nothing in my list is worth like unit strength,
Or
beat
maybe
me.
he killed the ones that did have units.
Yeah.
Well, no. So I got a really, really unlucky nerve roll, and it meant that he could counterattack my lesser obsidian golems. So yeah, it would have been a bit.
Suppose you could
different.
argue that given that he'd got the
Oh,
double one, maybe that was...
Absolutely. that's what I mean. It was such a tight game
Yeah.
everywhere. Like it.
That sounds
and
like
it
a
was.
good
It was
game.
the best game I played all weekend, and Clint as well, if you're listening. Just thank you so much for teaching me and taking the time to actually just go, no, this person's new. Let's explain things. Let's go. Actually, no, you think about this. You could do this, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, you got my spot vote for sure. But yeah, no. So he beat me, and it was 14-7. Good game.
And Andrew, you're last.
So we were having lunch before this game, and as we walked back into the venue, I turned to Benson and I said, "Oh, invade! You're always going to want first turn on this. I can't think of a time when you're not going to take first turn." So I was matched up against Ed Hamachek. Sorry if I've butchered your
Ed?
last name there. Ed, we shall call him. Playing Forces of Nature. His list had sort of a whole bunch of Forest Shamblers and then a few Hunters of the Wild Regiment and Centaur Bray Strider regiments. Now, a lot of these Scout,
Yep.
yeah, so they moved forward. So he scouted up quite a long way.
Surprise!
Yeah. Scouted up quite a long way and sat behind a hill.
It's quite intimidating when forests just rock up 12 inches in front of you at the start of the game.
Yeah, particularly when I had just finished saying, I have to get to the other side. I'm taking first turn no matter what. So to make matters worse, he had quite correctly positioned them behind a hill. So I couldn't see him to charge him. But if I moved forward onto that hill to be able to charge, then he would charge first. So either way, after vehemently pledging to always go first, I won the roll and gave him first turn. So, which ended up actually being a good move, I think.
So I was able. You don't always have to go first.
Yeah, I was able to anvil tank a few of those regiments probably better, and then get once the grind was going. Morgoth is an absolute legend for the grind. His drain life 9.
He's all about the grind.
Keeping things healthy.
I swear he
as
was...
healthy as an undead thing can be.
Yeah.
Morgoth was repeatedly screwing me in that previous lost game I was talking about as well.
Yeah, Morgoth was just out of control, particularly this game. I think the undead ended up more alive by the end of it than they did at the start.
Wow.
So, yeah, there was a few times where he'd come in but not quite do enough damage, and then the grind was on and I'd win that. One particularly stupid moment on my part was cleverly flapping my dragon up to kind of line up a few flank charges, seeing that he was hidden behind some trees. So that's good. The trees
forest shambles or actual forest?
No, forest, real forest, terrain forest.
Right, okay.
Yeah, there were forest shamblers behind, and there was a forest, and then there was a dragon, and it was probably all of 8 inches total between, but they couldn't see me. Now, what kind of undead general forgets entirely about the spell's surge? Yes, a bad one. Me. So the forest shamblers shambled on into the forest, had a little surge, straight in the flank, and all the grand plans for that dragon were put on a 3-turn hold as we slowly ground out each other. And luckily, I also won that grind, so I can't remember if Ed got particularly unlucky or whatever. Maybe the army's just, he's a bit of a grindy army and I was a bit more grindy, so I beat him in his own game or something. But it was a pretty fun game. I really enjoyed it, and but I did end up getting the win. I think it was 17-4 overall for that one.
Nice.
Yep,
one.
17-4. All right, so that was day one. We got to hang out with Ronnie for a bit.
Yeah, our boy Ronnie.
During the lunch break.
CEO of Mantique.
Got our rule books signed, so that was nice.
Yeah, we did.
Funny
too.
fella.
That was cool. A few photos and whatever else. Had a few beers with him afterwards as well.
At the pub, yep.
At the pub with all the lads as well.
Poor bugger looks dead tired.
Yeah, we were all a bit buggered, I think. But yeah, I was hungover as a moose. I think
how hungover are moose?
Quite. All the time.
Yeah.
It's like perpetual
they get
hungover.
on it,
Yeah.
So I was feeling a little rough the whole day, frankly. And so was, so were all of us.
Which is why we didn't record after day one.
Yes, why we didn't. Yeah, that's right. We were just too maggoted by them.
The real lesson here is that the minimum alcohol concentration of a bent spoke beer is 7%. Right? It climbs from there. Just careful.
Indeed.
So the day before the tournament.
Sensible number of beers with an unsensible amount of alcohol in them. And got pretty drunk, quite honestly. So yeah, Saturday was a hangover fest. But then we had another few drinks that night, but managed to keep it sensible enough such that on the Sunday we
refreshed.
weren't quite as brutal. And we all went up 2-1 despite our various levels of hangovers.
So who was the day one winner?
So Viv was in the lead.
Vivaluni. You were in the top 20% for sure at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, no, I was 9th.
Yeah.
And how were you feeling about that with your bet?
I wasn't too worried.
You weren't too worried with his current position at that time?
I was mildly worried. But I thought, what goes up must come down.
Viv! Too high! The wings had melted and Icarus was on his way down.
Anyway, so we...
but nevertheless, like a very admirable showing after day one. I mean, if it had been a 3-game tournament, there it is.
You would have lost.
9th out of 60, whatever.
65.
for his first tournament. So full
Yeah.
credit to Viv. Like that's an awesome.
But there was a day 2.
There wasn't it.
So, feeling much better than the day before. I was actually feeling quite chipper. We came into round 4. Plunder was the first scenario. I was up against Tim and his orcs. Played him a couple of times. Was it orcs? No. It was Kings of Men. That's it. Had hordes of dudes. The hitting on 4s and winning on with crushing 1 with defense 3.
Were they green?
No.
Probably humans.
I think he was playing orcs the last time I played him in Convict. That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of flying stuff as well. So like 2 generals and a Pegasus dude and 2 mammoths and a giant.
Someone get this man another port.
This one, I felt like I just got diced off. Often, like one of my minces would get into his hordes. I did 17 damage in 1 round of combat, plus brutal, didn't take it off. And then I would do the same thing with other units, and then I'd just need a 6, maybe a 5, and didn't take them off. And this consecutively happened, and I was getting a bit miffed. Like even just a knight troop, I tried 3 rounds of combat and shooting, and they just survived. And it's felt like, what can I do? But I did get a bit of justice at the end. That severely damaged horde was like the last turn. Bugger it, I'll get my wizard. I just had a wizard and a standard bearer left. Lightning bolt, 1 wound, 1 damage. Take it off.
That's
so it felt a little bit
efficiency.
there.
The old 1 damage, take it off. Gotta love it.
But I couldn't score anything because of plunder, and I ended up with a 1 to 20 loss on that one. It was quite a thwacking for me.
Must have had sore butt cheeks after that move.
More than just butt cheeks. It was my legs were hurt and the throat was hurt and everything
Crikey,
was
John
wrong.
Lane Gay. Oh well, can't win them all. So plunder round 4, huh? So this is the one. You didn't explain the scenario, but this is the one where you
Let's
have
plunder. Look it
to
up in the rulebook. You'll be right.
do the stuff. 5 loot counters. Yeah.
That's all on the center line.
But 2 of the loot counters are worth 2, and
Yep.
2 are worth... the other 3 are worth 1. And as it turned out, in my game against Damo, who's a Team Shed character, they're villains from Melbourne, little group of Kings of War players, pretty indisputably good players. I think they were about half the Masters or something, those guys. So they're definitely a powerful crew of super nerds. I played Damo, lovely bloke, met him a couple of times at events and stuff, but I hadn't played him before. This game was the game where I got just really lucky. Where I said that game a couple of games ago, I had some quite poor luck. This was the other way around. This was a very fortunate game on my part. We both... I was also, for some reason, playing really slowly. I ran out of time in this game. Went to 7 and I didn't get a 7. Not that it would have really done anything in 7. But ran out of time right at the end of turn 6, which is unlike me. Quite often I run the clock low, but very rarely do I completely run out of time. And this one, I guess I was just too sloppy with my time management. And I don't know, I think we both played pretty well. It was a tight game, a tough game. It felt like a Masters game. He's a Masters player, and you could tell he played really nicely. And despite the fact that I got quite lucky early with a few things, I kept wavering his little Flappy Bird dudes. It's like he was playing, I didn't say, I suppose, but he was playing Salamanders.
Yeah.
Interesting list, few fire dudes, I don't know. I haven't played Salamanders ever before, except once against Chris a million years ago, and it's completely different meta.
Yeah.
Salamanders are so different now. They're one of the most changed armies, I reckon, and most improved armies, in fact, in 3rd edition. But yeah, he had a bunch of stuff, Salamander stuff. And it involved 2 flying characters. And one of them in particular was really critical to a flank where that was the flank that he'd stacked more, whilst I'd stacked the other one more. And he really needed this flying lizard friend to get in the front of my units and just hold them up, deal with them, so that he could then clean up the flank, in a nutshell. And I wavered it 3 times in a row with just my lightning bolt from old mate. I mean, they're only like 11, 13 or whatever, but I got like 3 damage, rolled an 8 to waver them turn 1, and then he'd heal it or whatever, and then I just wavered again and wavered again. So I wavered it 3 times. But he got his revenge, this little lizard bastard, because he charged the front of my shock troops in about turn 5 or something, and he's got like 4 attacks or something. He's not going to kill them, but he did like a couple of wounds, whatever. And then I countercharged, and he'd already taken several damage from being lightning bolted all game. So despite all the waivers being quite handy for me, I'd never actually broke him. So he went in, and then they double one him. So they did 1 million damage and double one him.
Justice in a way.
That then got, it was kind of. They then got flanked and taken off as a result of that, which lost me an objective, which was quite troublesome. So I had the 3 central objectives, and the 2 side ones were the ones worth 2 points. So they were the ones getting contested. So this created a very swingy scenario where it could have been 5-2, my 3 in the middle, 1 on the flank, and then he gets the other one, right? It could have also been, if he gets both, 4-3, or obviously it could have been 7-zip.
Yep.
And I was in a position where it looked as though I was going, at the end of turn 6, I was basically 6-1 up.
Right.
I had them all, but I'd had to move my demon in a really awkward position where if it went to 7, he was going to get munched, and he was on the 2-point objective.
Yeah.
Furthermore, that was also the turn in which the double 1 occurred. So did go to 7. He got the demon.
Right. It was Tyrants that hit the demon in the butt.
Yeah. He was totally stuffed if it went to 7. Like he wasn't wounded, I think, but it doesn't matter. He got like 90 attacks in the rear or whatever. Like he was dead. But he was chilling on the 2-point objective, and the shock troops who had just fluffed it against the goddamn Flappy Bird had put their objective in jeopardy as well. So then it did go to 7. He got the Demon Lord, got the little unit, and therefore it went from a 6-1 swung back to a 4-3 in my favour. But I'd also been really jammy on the other side. And so the way I painted that, it made it sound like it was quite poor luck on my part. But actually, I'd had several just really lucky moments throughout the game. And that's the only reason I was in that position to be in the first place, to be clear. And so then on the other side, I just got jammy as hell and killed his big unit of super hardcore defense 6 guys with my big old rat friend.
Mutant Fiend?
Rat. I could never remember what that guy was
Mutant
called.
Rat Fiend.
Mutant Rat Fiend. The same as Viv. I can't remember what anyway he was called.
I'll just correct everyone. It's all right.
Someone's
got to know.
I did like 6 wounds to them all together over a couple of rounds, and then just double 10 them. 10 and 10.
Nice.
I can't even remember in so many games of Kings of War in recent memory. I cannot remember a time where I've like double 10 something. But I did. There you go. Out they went, and that allowed me to turn around and force that second objective into my favour. So anyway, it went up 4-3. Could have been 6-1, but I'm kind of glad it did go to turn 7 and was pulled back that far because, quite frankly, it wasn't a 6-1 game. Like, it was a closer game than that, and I'd been cheesy and lucky earlier.
Yeah.
So if it ended 6-1, it would have been not reflective of the actual result.
That was kind of like my game with that round. It didn't. I mean, it was close, but because I just couldn't finish it off, it didn't feel like a 21 game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And sometimes that can happen with that 4-pluser, but at least like I was winning on 6. I was still winning on 7, but by a much narrower margin. So I didn't get 4+ off. And yeah, jammy game. This was the game where I got really lucky. In direct contrast to the game a couple of games before where I got really unlucky. So, happy days. In the end, 14-7, I believe. A losing win, that is it? No, that's just a win.
That's a straight win.
14-7.
That's the most standard win possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Viv, you're 4.
So, my 4 was against Bruce Tobin. He was playing ogres, and by ogres, I mean ogres with guns, and lots of them.
Yeah, that's his ogres. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
he
but
took...
this ogre list had 3 ogre shooters and an ogre boomer horde.
Yep.
That's a lot more guns than a
and then
normal
2
ogre unit
warlocks
list.
that just lightning bolt shit, and get extra lightning bolts depending on how many hordes are nearby. A hero, I can't remember his name, but I'm just going to call him D3.
Call him Grok.
Mr. D3. And boy, did he give me the D3.
Grok punch.
Yeah, for sure. And then, there may have been 2 other heroes that I'm just not sure about. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, it was like super elite. I'm talking like 7-8 drops, like really small numbers. And it was the objective where you just got to put the things on the line and then like pick them up, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, the loot tokens.
yeah, because he had so few drops and he had to deploy first. He had that item where it's like you have to deploy 1 plus D3 things.
Gem of Scrying.
Yeah, I really rate. I think he probably built his list around that thing, right? So
Yeah,
I have
the
low
elf guy had the
drops,
same
I
thing.
can-
Similar situation, low drops, D3 things. And he got the 3.
Yeah,
It's just D3, I think.
yeah. Oh no, it's 1 plus D3.
So I'll just go through his list. He had a horde of boomers, 2 hordes of shooters, 2 hordes of siege breakers, and then 2 warlocks and Grokagamok. Because of battle scribe list thing. 1 boomer, shooter, siege breaker. Yeah, 3.
Yeah, it was 3 hordes
yeah.
shooters.
Yeah.
That's not many. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hordes, and then 3 characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small
Yeah.
small army, but as Viv says, that's just an obscene
Yeah.
amount of shooting.
Still more unit strength than your army.
Yeah, probably. So he had that D3+1 drops thing, and he used it immediately, which meant I had to deploy like 4 things at once, and I was like, oh, okay.
That's
And
half your
because I
army.
had to do that. He now got a lot of like scope on shooting, and because all the shooting's like range 30, except for the boomers, which are range 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a bit worrying. However, I refused to flank, so I put stuff in the middle, and then he kind of put stuff on the side. But then I deployed all my strength on one side, and I knew I was just going to wreck the right flank. It was absolutely mine. And because he put all of his shooters like literally on his back line, there was no way they were ever going to get to the objectives, right?
I don't know. They're speed 6.
Yeah, they're speed 6, but there was so much terrain on the table, they're always going to be hindered or whatever. So he... and I also had hills, which meant I pretty much always had cover. There were hills everywhere. So all I needed to do was sit on the middle line, which I got to almost immediately, and just let him shoot me, right? Just let him hit me on 6s.
Yeah.
And he'll never get the objectives. And if he comes too close to get them, I kill him.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. And I completely wrecked the right flank. I should have done it sooner. I got really unlucky there, but I eventually got there. It took me maybe a turn longer than it should have. And also I learned what...
Grok?
Yeah, Mr. D. He walks up to my Supreme Ironcaster on Great Winged Half-Breed, also known as Jeff.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. And he's just like, oh, I'll do a casual 12 to 16 wounds. And I'm like, fuck me, what the hell?
This is somewhere in that
'Cause
range.
I didn't even, like, I look at his list and I'm like, okay, cool. Like 3 characters. I'm expecting that thing to go in, have 6 attacks, be crushing street.
No,
Crushing
this is
3
Grok.
and hit on 3s. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can take a charge from that thing. And then he's just like, oh. And he just kept on rolling dice. And I'm like, what's going on? Why didn't anybody want me?
Blast D3.
Yeah. And then, I was like, oh, no. But I had the heavy iron
Your
obsidian
greater
golem. Sorry. And that thing is probably my MVP for the entire tournament. Like, he's up there with the decimators.
Mm-hmm.
He's never been disappointing. Except for I only figured out he had Fearless 19 until game 5. I thought it was Fearless 17 before that because I just assumed it was the same Fearless as the lesser.
And he was still kicking goals for
He
you,
was
so-
still smashing face.
Good on him.
Sounds like he needs a nerf back down to dash
It
17
doesn't
then.
matter.
but,
Like he's
you know.
so good. Anyway, it's the Strider. It really helps them. Anyway,
Yeah.
So I realized that once I had that flank locked down, like maybe I could be a little bit more aggressive and actually go for a bigger win instead of like sitting in the middle. So I moved up some chaff to make sure he couldn't countercharge my grotesques, and then I put the grotesques in a position where there was no way he could get out of their way, and then I could start mopping stuff up because of the way like the angles were, he just couldn't see them, which meant he'd have to turn to see them and then only hit them on 6s. And I'm thinking he's already committed to shooting the lesser obsidian golems a lot. He kind of want to finish them off. Like you think you really do want to finish them off. Because he's hitting them on 6s.
And if you leave them
wounding
alone, they
on-
can regen them
so
back.
6s and then 4s, right? Oh no, well the lesser obsidian golems don't have regen. But yeah, the grotesques do.
Yeah.
So I put them on the hill, I forced that thing, and I'm like, cool, it's very unlikely he's going to do 16 to 18, hitting on 5s, but the other one was hitting on 6s. And,
Why do I feel this is a
30-inch
drag
range.
coming up?
And yeah, no, he fucking obliterated the unit. Like, he did 14 wounds after just hitting on 5s, wounding on 4s. And I'm just like, my God, I've made a mistake. All I had to do was sit there. That's all I had to do. But no, I was like, nah, let's punch some dick. But no, I couldn't help myself. So he obliterated that unit, and he did that with only 2 of them. The other ogre shooter then turned around and obliterated the lesser obsidian golem. And then that was the same turn that
Grok?
Yeah, Grok obliterated that. So in that one turn, it went from me just going, I've already won this game, like significantly I've won this game, to I just lost
I've
1,000
this
points. And not like I expect to lose something. It was these healthy things died.
Yep.
And that's when I was like, okay, I'm actually fucked. So I still managed to keep the flank that I devastated, and he then did some stuff to get all the way up, and there wasn't really much I could do about it. Also, my mortars again did nothing. Like I love them. I love how they can be world ending, but I don't think they suit my playstyle because I'm not capable of rolling 5s or 6s. And so that ended up being another 14-7. So like it was still close. He only won the objective by 1 point, and we killed a lot of each other's stuff. So yeah.
Awesome.
Andrew.
So I got to play Pavel. I won't try and say his last name, but Swordmaster from the world famous blog who plays multiple small units, MSU elves. So I had the enjoyable puzzle, which I haven't played
Of so many units on the
I
table,
haven't
trying
played
to figure out how
an
to stop things.
MSU army. I haven't played one. I haven't
Played against
personally,
one.
or I played it against one. So
Yeah, they're so rare in Kings of War. I would have loved to give it a shot. Actually,
Yeah,
I've never really played
But
proper
like,
MSU either.
like you've said offline, it's kind of intimidating when you write a list and you think, hang on, this nothing
Exactly.
does
When you-
damage.
when you-
it's
Nothing
just too many
does
things.
things.
I've looked to write the list, and then I finish them, and they look really bad on paper. I don't know why. I have this thing in Kings of War where I write a list, and I look at it on paper, and I'm like, it seems a bit weak. It's missing a lot of things. And then when I look at opponents' lists, every game across the table, when I look at their list, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be so hard. That list looks really good.
Well,
yeah.
I saw it.
How'd the
and
MSU list look to you?
It had 1 million drops, and just regiments of. They're all regiments. There's heaps of unit strength, and they're all so fast. So I had this fun puzzle to solve of come back here, you pointy-eared elf bastard.
Yeah.
But in the end, probably a similar thing when I held the tokens, and when I was attacked, there just wasn't enough damage to kill me, and then the grind was on. And as soon as there was one flank in particular where my Revenant Cav, who were absolute MVPs this game, they just ground out against some Drakon Riders.
Yep.
Probably.
Sure. Because he actually takes, he really commits to his MSU. Like, he actually takes a regiment of Drakon Riders, I
Yeah.
imagine. Not
Yeah.
a horde, like
Yeah.
every other elf player on the planet.
No, there
Takes an
was
actual legitimate regiment.
only 3 of them
Yeah.
on the base.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought he'd had to
Think you made a
saw him in
mistake.
half or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's your others, mate?
It's like the ogre. The ogre regiment, the fabled ogre regiment.
Yeah.
The 3 ogres.
You ever seen one? They just don't exist.
Apart from
Mythical.
Berserkers, but that's a different story.
Sure.
Yeah. So the cavalry,
Yep.
the Revenant Cav, they grounded out. Morgoth was drain lifing and kept them. They probably took 20 wounds and ended the game on full life.
Wow.
There was a really big roll
Man,
at one.
Morgoth's annoying.
Yeah. Really big roll on turn 5-ish. Yeah, it must have been turn 5, where I wavered some Palace Guard who were about to flank the Rev Cav, who had a 2-point objective or something. Either way, they got wavered, and then I was able to then get them next turn with the drain life of Morgoth plus the Rev Cav charge. So ended up, I had the 2 tokens that were worth 2, and he had the 3 that were worth 1, which probably makes sense since I was playing 11 drops and he had probably about 1100. It was a fantastic game. It was so fun to figure out the puzzle in my head, and I'm sure he was having a similar puzzle of how do you wear down the brick. Like he's got all these little droplets of water. How do you erode the brick so that it actually breaks? In the end, I got up, but it was a minor victory. A standard victory is 14-7, and I only won 13-8 because he actually killed more than I did. He got a point back for attrition, but a fantastic
It's even
game,
close.
and really good to play against as well. So
sounds fun, man.
A great game to start off day 2 for me.
So recap at the end of game 4.
Yeah.
I am 3 wins and a loss.
am
You're on
2 and 2.
2 and 2.
I'm 3 wins and a loss as well. Yeah,
3 wins and a
I was
loss as
doing
well. Doing well. And Viv is, I believe, 2 and 2 as well.
Yeah.
So after, again, airshipping nice and high in the first 2 games,
Things started to fall
crash
apart.
to earth now.
There's some debris coming off that ship.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. Round 5 was push. I was up against Jeff, and I've played him once before, and remember it being very, very, very cagey, very tight, and came down right to the wire at the very, very end. And I was kind of kicking myself with this one. I timed out on turn 7, where my Cav Horde charged his Ironclad troops, so they're just a normal dwarf, who were holding all 3 push tokens, loot tokens. And I timed out when I was rolling for damage, and kind of rolled it out afterwards, and I would have taken them off to bring it back to a draw, but it was very cagey. Everything was super tight. Bit upset with one of my blasters, my Goblin Boom Wagons, hitting a shield breaker horde in the flank, hitting 5 times, and with all my blasts, only did 9 wounds. So
Oh, no.
that was
Yeah,
sad. That should have been a taken off forward, but it wasn't.
Like 5d6 hits.
Yeah.
So you'd get, what, max 30?
Yeah.
Up to like, I don't know, 17, 18 on average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yes.
That was fun.
If it was me, you would have got 36.
Yeah,
or something.
probably, and you would have been crying about it. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
But, yeah, there's not much to report. Everything was super tight. He played really, really well. I think I just stuffed up a bit there, and I don't know, maybe my army makes me roll too many dice with all the minces and whatnot, and that's why I timed out, but that's what happened. And it ended up very close. We killed very similar. I think it was only 35-point difference in terms of the amount of stuff killed.
Oh, wow.
So
Super
super
close.
close there, and then went down 14-7.
Wow, a lot of close games happening this round. So, round 5 push. I was against Michael. I don't recall what his last name is. Maybe you've got it, because there's probably several Michaels.
Yeah,
But
probably.
I really like this guy. He's my jam. He might be my new Kings of War
Geld.
boyfriend after Tony. Michael Guild?
Geld.
Geld. Okay, Michael Geld. So I love his army. He has Varangur, which I've only played once ever before. So this is and it was a completely different army, that army back in the day. So, I was quite unfamiliar with his army. But he's got all these really old school figures, and unlike a lot of those old school figure armies that just, look a bit old, it just looks good old. It looks nostalgic old,
Right.
and it's nicely
Not rubbish
painted.
old.
And I just loved his army. I really liked the way it looked on the table. And the game, this is one of the best games of Kings of War I've ever played. I just had such a good time this game. It was so fun. And it was tight as hell. Both of us were just bricking this entire game, because it was so tense. And honestly, I had Michael on the back foot after the end of, I want to say, 2. I took a big charge on 2 and basically ran over his middle and then reformed in a nutshell. So this was the loot tokens in the push, in which you have to get the loot tokens over the opposite side. And
Yep.
you start to deploy them in your own army. Both of us put all 3 loot tokens on our regiment on our far flank. However, I had a lot more influence on his regiment than he did on mine. Mine walked over and never even looked like being threatened for the whole game. The closest unit was an infantry unit 24 inches away or something. So I had no doubt that I was up with those 6 points, I guess. And then it was a case of the middle one and can he get his 3 over. So after getting up a bit early, and really Michael was on a back foot. He needed to do something. He needed to manoeuvre his butt off to get out of the situation. And he really did. He manoeuvred brilliantly, I thought. I think 95 out of 100 players in his position that I put him in at the end of turn 2 would have not only lost, but got rolled from that point on. But he manoeuvred really well. It turns out he had I didn't go through his army, but he had a horde of these dudes. Unfortunately, I don't know what they're called, but they're the Varangur, large infantry characters. They got Pathfinder and Nimble, so very maneuverable, and movement 8. Even though they're
8 Nimble's pretty good,
regiments.
and Pathfinder, yeah.
Yeah. So they're like werewolves with Pathfinder, and he may have given them the caterpillar potion. I'm not sure.
So were they the mounted sons of...
No,
Fallen?
they were large. They were like ogre-sized critters.
Okay, Fallen.
Fallen. That's them. Yeah. Anyway, how many attacks do those Fallen motherfuckers got?
I don't know. A bunch.
I thought you had them in front of you.
No.
Okay, you just make
Just the name. Just the name.
Just the name.
He put a brew of strength on it by the looks of the list.
Yeah, but I had him in a really good spot where I was. They were an inch in front of my shock troops, and I was ready. I was just sort of daring them to charge, basically, and then I just thought I'll win this grind eventually, and I had other units available to support. And he just did the 90-degree pivot, move 18 straight through the forest. Doesn't matter because I'm nimble and Pathfinder. Man. And then he did a bunch of other maneuvers which were quite clever as well. And then I made a colossal mistake, which is a tiny mistake but had colossal consequences, whereby after beating something in the charge, like some chaff or whatever, I rotated my shock troops a degree not far enough. And they were still in the arc of some mounted sons to get charged in the rear. So the mounted sons had their rear and probably shouldn't have. All I needed to do was rotate them a bit further. I kind of just eyeballed it, which is unlike me. I'm pretty good at getting the arcs out normally, but not this time. So they clearly had a rear charge. I needed to rotate them about an extra inch. They got up their butt. And even then, I didn't really mind. I was like, it's fine. Doesn't matter. I'll just jump on the 3 objectives, which he dropped in order to make that charge. Ooh. So, this is a cunning move on his part. He's got the 3 objectives in my half. And he's like, and I stopped 11 inches away. Now, you don't get wild charge with loot tokens. We knew this as we looked at it.
Okay.
So
No wild
he doesn't
charge,
have
no
wild
nimble.
charge, so he's only got movement 5. So I'm like, he can't charge.
Mm.
And I knew that he could drop the counters, because we discussed
At any
it.
point.
He could drop the counters to make the charge. But
At
I'm
the
like,
start of your movement, yeah.
I'm happy for you to drop the
Yeah.
counters and make the charge. Because then you drop the counters and you're nowhere near the bloody counters anymore. You know? So, but he did do that move. And I'm not sure if, to this moment really, if that was the right move or not, but he did it. And then he's fallen all the way around my demon who was trying to protect my rat fiend and got into him. So the big old rat beastie is Fearless 20 standing next to the demon. So Fearless 18, Rally 2, and Inspired. And he went through it in 1 round in the front.
So they're hitting on 3s with 18 attacks.
18 attack, hitting on 3s,
That'd be
crush
crushing
2.
two.
So they went on 2s.
Yeah.
But that's what, like 10 wounds on average? He's Fearless 20
Math Amadeus.
with rerolls. Yeah, so he did like 16 wounds or something.
Yeah.
And took it off. Like, just an amazing roll. And both of us were looking at each other like, what the hell? How did that happen? And then what that allowed him to do was rotate around and face the loot
Yeah.
tokens. So I was moving on to the loot tokens with my demon, and it was looking like this is going to be either a 6-0 or a 7-0, based on what happens in the middle. If I get these loot tokens, and then you get held up for a single round by my giant bloody Fearless 20 monstrosity, then we're still good. So I was happy despite my big mistake. But wasn't to be. He turned around, then charged the rat fiend in the last turn and took him off. Similarly, in the middle, I had a couple of opportunities to break his unit. Didn't quite get there. Just rolled a little under average and fell short of him. He didn't get the middle one, but it also meant that I couldn't get the middle one.
Right.
So that was a wash. So it was 3-all draw. And because of the way I maneuvered to sort of put my balls on the line, so to speak, to get those counters, I ended up going way down on the points. Like I lost the rat fiend in the last turn. I lost the demon lord in the last turn. So it went down 1830 to 695 on attrition, which meant it was a losing draw. So 8 points to 12. But
Pretty close.
I tell you what, like, yes, he got some lucky dice toward the end, but Mike played his absolute tits off and needed to get himself back into that position. He played for the win in a spot where lots of people would have just given up.
Yeah.
And that's part of what, and like both of us were like so tense for a lot of the game because it was all these die rolls. It's like, oh shit, it goes this way or that way. It's going to be a big deal. It's such a good game. So yeah, draw, awesome game.
Good. Viv.
Cool. So, just a bit of pretext. This is the one game that I absolutely deserve to lose, and the main reason for that is
Just the one game.
Just the one.
oh well, like
Wait, count them. How many?
no,
Yeah, one.
yeah,
Yeah, one.
one. No, this,
Everything else was
This
just
is the one where
luck
I'm like,
or-
no. Well, the last one was luck. Like, just deleted 3 things for free.
Bit of sodium there.
But
anyway.
this game was one of those games where actually my inexperience was compounded by my inability to deal with 10 units that fly. And then the rest of his list.
So who were you up against?
I'm trying to find the name now. Give me a sec.
Terry Chapman.
Yeah. And he was actually just a really good guy as well. We sat and we talked for maybe like an hour and a half after the game and just about random stuff.
Oh, really cool.
So the second I saw what his list was, I was just going, oh, I'm having flashbacks to like Chaos Flyer lists in Fantasy where you just can't really control everything. They have such good mobility that they can just pick all the charges and everything always gets a flank charge because you go wide enough and even though it looks like it's in your face, it doesn't matter. They go 20 and it's going to hit a flank just because there's 10 of them and they go wide enough, right?
So he was running a Night Stalker army with 32 unit strength.
Yeah.
32.
12.
That is literally
Butcher's Horde, Doppelganger's Regiment, Doppelganger's Regiment, Phantom's Regiment, Phantom's Regiment, Phantom's Regiment, Phantom's Regiment, Phantom's Regiment.
that
Wow.
is so
Soulflayer,
many
3
unit strength.
Soulflayer regiments.
That's
there you
more
go.
than double the unit strength of the previous army you faced.
Yeah.
Wow.
Either way, it had a billion. It had way more than 3 soul flayers. Like the soul flayers were like his list. He had way more than that.
No, 3. I just read it.
Sure, he had a lot of units, whatever.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
Yeah, not well. So I started by going, okay, I don't really know how to deal with this. Let's kind of go back to my old strategy days. And I was thinking, let's just sit in a corner and just kind of pray that he can't get all the flank charges because there are no way to land on my flanks. But then halfway through my deployment, I don't know, I had a seizure. I just kind of forgot what my plan was.
Blinded.
Yeah. And again, because my shooting's going to be useless in this, and it was, I didn't hit once. I decided to put like a couple of threats on one of my flanks, so we had to go deal with them. So my grotesques and my half-breeds went way off, and then everything else sat in one corner. And I'm like, okay, go on. You have to divert some things to go deal with those units. But I also moved up the half-breeds a bit sillily, and I moved up the other unit. But then he just used Windblast 5 on like all of his units to then like push them back into place, which was really funny. So they may not have, like there was no point moving them forward. So I couldn't project the threat there.
Yeah, those troops of flyers have Windblast, all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Windblast is all like
It's very
so
rare.
useless most of the
Better
time.
than Hex.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So what it let him do
Windblast is
is
a bit underrated. I reckon.
push
Okay.
my unit out of it so it couldn't charge.
Yeah.
By pushing it off the hill.
Yep.
So it had no
How
line
often
of
does
sight.
it come down to a few inches?
Yeah.
the Kings of
Well,
War
no,
game?
it does when you got 3 different units that do it on
No,
fire.
I'm saying how often, as if to
okay.
imply it is
Yeah.
often.
yeah. No, you're
So-
absolutely right. It's always about the
Yeah,
little
yeah.
movements.
So I didn't have any like way of projecting threat using his words because he pushed the unit back that could punish things if they went for all the flank charges. But then on top of that, because it pushed the stuff back, everything moved up. I couldn't move forward anymore because that unit would just die, right? So I decided to kind of like leave my hero there and then kind of push back and be a little bit more cagey. But I didn't really realize, and this is I made this mistake again in my last game, but I need to stop eyeballing 20 and going, yeah, that's too far away. You
Measure.
can't get in.
Always measure.
You've always got to measure the 20.
Absolutely.
Always. So like, and without fail, he made like
I reckon most times you
6
move a unit,
charges.
you should be measuring from the opponent's unit to that unit.
Yeah.
Like most times you move
Yeah.
a unit, you should be going, what's it in charge range of, and
Yeah.
measuring it straight up.
Yeah. But he just had so many units. I was like, I
Yeah.
was bamboozled this
You
whole
only had
game,
12
right?
units. There's only one more than you.
Yeah, no, but when you got loads and loads of
Yeah.
flyers, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't blame
Like,
you for being bamboozled. It's
Everything
really
can
hard
get
to
into
deal
combat
with.
all
Yeah,
the time.
it makes you think a
So
lot.
I'm
Yeah.
sitting there and I'm like, oh, okay, if I go to this angle, that's fine and stuff. And then he's just like,
I feel like if you got that many flyers, your opponent should have an extra 5-10 minutes on the clock
Yeah.
because you got to think so
Yeah.
much moving units.
and that's what happened, right? I made a tiny mistake where he's like, nah, these two are in the flank for these reasons. And that's something I genuinely do not understand. The flanking, charging, bumping out of contact to then do a pivot immediately to then flank charge something fucking years away. Like, all of that stuff just does not sit in my head right because I'm a fantasy player, fantasy Warhammer. None of it makes sense to me yet. So I need to really get a lot more games to start
To drill it
even
in.
Another option would be to
visualize the
read the rule book.
possibilities.
That would help. a
Oh,
lot,
I'm
too.
not going to read the rule book.
What a ridiculous suggestion, Hugh.
So yeah, just I thought I was in a
Not
safe
very long.
position, and he just put 1,000 painful things into the grotesques, wrecked them. And then he just went all into the half breeds and the character, and again, so that all died. Everything was 20 inches closer, and then it didn't matter what I did with my flanks, he could always get a flank charge. And even though it was like 1 millimeter flush, like super janky Warhammer fantasy level cheesy charges on the flank, it doesn't matter, right? It's a flank charge. You're in. It doesn't matter that you're only in by an inch and then your unit's flapping out this side. You're still in.
Yeah.
So, and just all of those, and he completely wrecked me because the flyers and
It's probably
I
a
don't know how
game
to deal
playing
with
that many flyers. It is something that you can deal with more easily with experience, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
I
it's
think-
a hard thing.
I think
to
for
cope
me, having not played Warhammer Fantasy and only been playing Kings of War for almost a year anniversary with the CanCon, dealing with flyers was like one of the key learning things that made me
I can deal with
better.
1 to 2 to 3, but when the whole list moves that quick, you can't control. You can't. You just mitigate. You try and make the shitstorm a bit less shit.
Yeah, it's hard.
So what was the score at the end?
I think it was 18-3.
Okay. Viv, too close to the sun.
Too close, babe.
No, I absolutely deserved to lose that game. There was no way I was winning it. That one, hands down, doesn't matter what the dice rolls were, he won that. Like, it doesn't matter.
All right, Andrew. What do you got?
So, yeah, my game 5 was against Peter Ball playing Dwarfs.
Did you have a ball?
No, I mean, it was a bad game, and I don't want to say it was me being unlucky that lost me the game, because that's sort of a thing bad players would say. Viv?
Yeah, all right.
But
However-
it was though.
However, I did get fairly unlucky on my dragon having a
Bad player.
Dragon had something like 50 attacks over the course of the game that were hitting on 4s and then wounding on often 2s, always at least 3s, often 2s. And I think we counted up at the end and only did 12 wounds in total.
Doesn't work.
And it just, proving that probability is just a mythical thing made up. And he just needed to kill, he was killing a dwarf lord with the wings of the honey maze.
Yep.
It took him 3 turns to chew through that guy, and then another 2 turns to not even kill a steel behemoth that had charged in the front.
Right.
And all I needed to do was, if I killed that steel behemoth, I pick up the loot token that it was holding, toddle it over to the other
I hate those things.
side of the
Loot
board.
tokens? Or
Steel
steel
behemoths.
I didn't find it that bad.
Are those the monster-sized ones, or are they
They're the chariot defense 6 things with guns sometimes.
yeah.
I thought,
Yeah, I hate those things too, actually. They're annoying.
yeah, it's a good unit. I was confident that I was happy with the matchup. I was like, yeah, I've got a lot of crushing here. I'll get this. I'll kill this and pick up that loot token, walk it over, get 2 points. Sweet.
Nope.
No.
Nope. I did do something stupid. My wraiths charged some chaff, killed it, but it was sitting on a obstacle, and I was like, oh yeah, forward. So I went forward, and then I got charged. But if I had gone backward half an inch instead, he would have been disordered. And so there was a little grind there that, even after a bit of a stupid play, that grind was probably still in my favor, because then I had some revenants that came up and tried grinding that same unit. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but they weren't superstar regiment. It was just some dwarf lads.
Just the ironclads, yeah? They're like defense 5.
Yeah, yep. Oh, not the big horde. It was just a regiment. I think they're
Iron
only
Guard.
the defense 4 ones.
Oh, they're the shield breakers with the crushing.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, if my dragon had have killed things properly, he could have gone and helped and crushed that. And my revenant regiment of just foot soldiers who were carrying a token would have.
He didn't have a steel behemoth. Steel
Oh,
juggernaut.
steel juggernaut.
That's the defense 6 character.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that is what
The
I was
Vanguard
thinking,
fella,
actually.
yeah.
Because I'd played him at Masters, and he had those things.
And the
Because he was a Masters player, that guy. I think,
Oh,
if it's the same guy that we're thinking of.
Yeah, he played everything else really well.
in my round 5, like Jeff had 3 of those steel juggernaut characters.
Oh, right.
It's such a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they are pains, those little guys. And they've got decent nerves on them, and they shoot pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're weird. I can't decide if they're great or not, but they're
They're alright.
good
They're
little
annoying.
utility units.
I think they're good, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're OP really, but they're good little utility units. Anyway, you fluffed your attacks against it. It cost you a lot of
and I was fluffing
consequences.
a lot of things were fluffing. Those 2 in
So
particular.
you're making excuses, yep.
Yeah. I rolled a couple of real jammy waivers though. It couldn't roll anything else to save my life, but if I needed a 10 to waiver that unit, that bad boy got a 10.
Yeah.
Yep. So it could have been much worse of a loss for me if I hadn't have rolled one of those trademark 10s and wavered the big horde that was carrying 3 tokens just the wrong side of the center line. So he got 3 points for that instead of 6. But in the end, it was a 5-3 in like victory points loss to me that I felt I should have got that left flank where there was that issue,
Hindsight.
the killing issue. If that had happened, it might have changed it. But it was yet another great game, and I think
Score on that one?
Yeah, in the tournament points, it was a 15-6 loss,
All right.
and probably fair. I didn't play it. I made some mistakes, and against some players, if we were talking about this before as well, if you notice mistakes, for every mistake you notice, there's a heap of mistakes that you've made that you didn't notice or aren't obvious, or not even so much mistakes. It's just you could have done that better.
When you don't rotate a unit more than like 1 inch further, and then they get recharged as a result, it's a really obvious mistake.
Yeah, but
there's
no one's
so
that
many little
noob, are
micro. There's so many micro mistakes.
Yeah.
That you make all the time, just small positioning things and stuff that, as you say, your opponent might not notice even. and
Yeah.
you might not notice.
Yeah.
But there's always little ways that you can improve at the game that are proof, I think, that that's why some players consistently win despite these
Because they don't make many mistakes.
poor luck scenarios that occasionally come up as
Yeah,
we've
the
spoken about.
people who keep winning tournaments, they roll the same dice we do, so they
No,
must
they roll
not
better
get
dice.
lucky all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to get their dice then. You reckon that's
Master's
the
dice,
only
yeah.
difference is that they've got
Yeah.
the right voodoo
Next
dice.
time Tracy comes to an event or whatever, just like switch out his dice bag, just pickpocket him or something.
Yeah.
But like, got to give the man some dice, so just give him your dice. for the
Give
event.
him Spoon's dice.
Mysterious.
I reckon he'll
Yeah,
still
give him
win. He'll
Spoon's
still
dice.
win.
Yeah, good luck with that.
All right, last game. We have Control. I don't know about you guys, but I was knackered. Kind of losing my enthusiasm
I
after
always
the
am
2
by game
losses.
6. Always just ready to drop off my chair.
I wasn't too bad. I was
Well,
actually...
I
yeah, I was
rally.
perky.
I immediately think this is the last one.
I start to care less in the last game.
Yeah, me too.
I was pumped for it until I
Normally.
saw Empire of Dust,
Cared
who are
about this
my
one, though.
Achilles heel, and
No, for me, the fifth game's always the hardest because I'm sitting there and I'm tired after the first game and I'm like, fuck, I have another one after this. That's the demoralizing thing for me. It's always the middle game.
Well,
It's
I
one game.
felt like I got diced off in round 4, and then I just was kicking myself in round 5. So, wasn't too sure I was going to go with round 6, but I was up against Mark, who was also playing Goblins, so good thing that even if I lost,
Gob off.
Goblins would win. And quite a different army to what I was playing. He had, I think it was like 6 regiments, or maybe 5, I don't know. He had a bunch of regiments of spear dudes, a regiment of shooters, 3 troll hordes, a couple of giants, and a smattering of characters,
A bunch
3
of,
trombones as well.
Shooting. Oh, they were trombones.
Yeah, yep. They look like catapults, but
That's that's only because you use them as catapults.
Yeah.
They could be trombones just as easily, I guess.
I suppose, yeah. Anyway, so
I mean, how does one spit something like 45 inches away or whatever it is?
with a lot of force, I guess.
Yeah, very strong throat muscles, I guess. A lot of wind
enough.
pressure.
Anyway, so with Control, we both kind of spread out. He had a very light one side. I think it was just 1 regiment of spear dudes and a horde of trolls. So I just put a horde of rabble, some of my more beasts, and the character Quizlo, because he can run through forests and stuff. So he was being annoying. And then the other side, we just were super heavy. I had both my minces. He had all the other trolls and the giants and whatnot. And it looked like I was going to lose pretty soundly. He was faster than me, so I thought, bugger it. If I got a chance to charge, I'll charge. Ran in, did some damage, things died, but most of my stuff was starting to fall apart at that time, and what was remaining is maybe 1 Luggett regiment, which was attacked by a horde of trolls. 17 damage and double wand. So my Luggets were standing there pretty devo, but still standing, and they could countercharge, wavered the trolls, so they couldn't charge back in the next turn, and so, oh great, wavered, let's got to do one more. So he started throwing some lightning bolts and Warbow of Kabar and breath weapon to try and do 1 damage on these Luggets, because they were already devastated, and he failed to wound
What?
Yeah.
on some defense fort fellas.
Madness.
So they charged the trolls again and took them off.
Right. So
Sounds like
this was your lucky game.
sounds like you really just
It was
outplayed.
that double one that,
outplayed him,
that
yeah.
stuffed him, yeah. But this also, like, I charged a giant with a boom wagon, hit twice, did my blasts, and only damaged 1.
Oh, right.
That was a bit underwhelming. But in the end, he just had his characters left. He took 1 corner, or took 2 corners, and I took 4. So both the central ones and the opposite corners. Just because I had like a boom wagon left, which is 1 unit strength.
Yep,
It was
that's
just
all you
sitting there,
need.
didn't do anything, but took a section. And yeah, I didn't feel like I should have won that, but I did. It was 16-5 in the end. Cheers, Mark.
Well played. Oh, well, it's good to see the positive side, or not really positive side, but the victory side of the double one for a change.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
nice to see.
But I could just feel for him, because that double one collapsed the entire flank for him.
But not only that, but then to follow it up by still failing to kill the unit when you really, really should. That's pretty good.
And killing something else, and
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
classic double ones there.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Yeah, someone should talk
I
to you about
know
that.
you listen to this on the plane on the way home. He's probably be flying back by now. Seriously though, get rid of double ones. Okay. All right. So last round for me was against Ken. we were playing the control scenario, as you said, the 6 quadrants that you're trying to get hold of, especially your opponent's middle one.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an interesting game. A lot of rules disputes came up in this game, which pretty much never happens to me in Kings of War, like never. But sometimes it was, like, 1 or 2 times it was him being wrong about something. 1 or 2 times it was me being wrong about something. And each time, like, I learnt a little something about how the game works. When, like, you think you just know the rules for something clear as day, and then you realise, oh, I've subtly misinterpreted that, and that's
You know
not
what your
how it
problem
works.
is? You read the rule book. See, if you just don't know what the rules are, that doesn't happen.
You see, but if you don't know what the rules are at all, then when your opponent tries to pull a shifty on you, or more to the point, they think it works a certain way, they're not actually trying to pull a shifty, but they think it works a certain way and it turns out it doesn't, and you don't dispute it, you just go, oh yeah, cool, whatever. Then you get rolled when potentially, you know, it could have worked in your favour, if you know what I mean. So it works both ways. It's a, I certainly wouldn't recommend to the listeners out there that not reading the rule book. Don't listen to Uncle Viv when it comes to finishing in the top 20%. So anyway, this game, he had a really bizarre orc army with just legions of chariots out the wazoo. He had a legion of orc chariots and 2 legions of... They're not called chariots, but they're
The fight
a
wagons.
similar thing. Fight wagon, is that what they're called?
Yep.
So those fight wagons are nuts.
Yep.
30 attacks.
They're basically
Dash
berserkers
20.
on chariots.
Yeah, they're mental, but they're also on an enormous base. So he had those 3 massive bases lined up against one another, and then also 2 regiments of orc cavalry and guacamole, or whatever his name is. Gakamakwak. So he had a lot of... Basically, it was the cavalry supercharged down the guts kind of maneuver. And it looked like if I let him get the multi-charges, because he outdistances me a bit overall, the saving grace of those death wagons or whatever is that they're only movement 7, so they're not quite up there at the 8 of a lot of chariots. So you can, to an extent, use that to your advantage. And I had to move super cagily, which is part of the reason I think that the rules disputes were coming up and stuff. Both of us were trying to move cagily because I really needed him to hit me piecemeal. And if he hit me piecemeal, one of these 30 attack monstrosities into the front of one of my hordes, or like my rat demon or whatever, any one of my units almost, I could probably hold and then counterattack.
And these...
But 2 into 1 unit and they'll go straight through
These fight wagons, one of them had the Brew of Sharpness, the other had Elite.
Yes. So they're consistent as hell. So even 1 unit into the front has like a not outrageous chance of just
Hitting on 2s.
killing you.
Crushing strength 1 with 30 attacks.
Yep, hitting on 2s.
That's pretty
I know,
good.
right? So I would always try to enforce they were hindered. I was aware, particularly with the sharpness one,
Yeah.
I was aware that, like, you know, it's quite possible they'll just charge straight into the front of a horde and just kill it. Which isn't meant to happen with 1 unit, but they're that good. So I was moving really cagily. And to cut a long story short, I did essentially manage to get him to charge piecemeal. So he never once charged a unit with 2 units.
Right.
And I was able to take his army apart piecemeal in turn. So charged him with a cavalry unit, I'd take it off. And he charged him with the bloody giant, and then flank charged it. Classic infantry versus cavalry kind of game.
Yeah.
Where he had all the fast stuff, and I was slower than him, but was able to countercharge effectively. Anyway, eventually got up fairly convincingly here. Did nearly table old mate Ken, but actually I was getting a bit sloppy toward the end of the game. I think I was just getting tired and stuff because I forgot, I lost track of the turns, and it was turn 6 and I hadn't moved into all the available table quarters yet.
Yep.
I would have had to move things
Leaving it a
differently
bit late.
the previous couple of turns or whatever to get perhaps 1 more, I reckon. I could have got 1 more if I'd moved a bit more smartly.
Yep.
Which would have been worth a tournament point if I had. But in any case, still managed to get up 4 points to 1. Got the 2 on his, and 2 other quarters. And he had got 1 where he's like small fry unit beat my small fry unit and claimed that quarter.
Right.
So a pretty convincing win in the end. There was a few cagey moves and like pseudo rule disputes, which I'm quite unused to in Kings of War, but it was still a good game overall. And I think I didn't mention either that Ken did double 1 me at one point. It was one of those double 1s where like it feels terrible for your opponent because he's got up to 18 or something on this 16 nerve unit. He's double 1'd it. He's like, shit, I'm stuffed now. I need to go through you in the center, and I didn't. But actually, what happened, I countercharged, did like 5 wounds or so, then he killed it the next turn. It meant the shock's troops didn't die when they should have, probably, because they would have got flanked or whatever. But on the other hand, them dying would not have actually changed the result except by attrition. I'd still had that quarter regardless. So I still would have killed that unit. So you look at it and you go, well, it's one of those things that, like, depending on which side of the table on, you would have a different opinion about how devastating that particular double one was. But it was nice to have one against me because it'd been an awfully long time since I last saw an opponent roll a double one. So that was juicy.
And you need that feeling every so often.
Indeed. Very
Give you
much
a bit
so.
of hope.
Give me a bit of Marvin Gaye. 17-4 that game.
Fair enough.
Two to go.
I finally got to play the army that I might actually start collecting because I've been borrowing this Abyssal Dwarf list. And I really like the idea of
Basileia.
Thank you.
Basilia.
And he played a
Basileia.
Basilia Alpha Strike list. And this is
Don't listen
Trevor...
to Hugh for pronunciation. He can't remember his own units. It's Basileia.
Neither can Viv, so
Basilia.
just you do you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say it however you want. It's fantasy.
Yeah. So... All right. Team Alpha Chad Angels.
Yep.
So this is your last round, right?
Yeah, this is my last round.
So you're steering the top 20%.
No.
You're steering it down the barrel. You're
Oh
like,
no! Well, I needed
all I need-
for me to have got it in the top 20%. I would have needed a 21 in this game.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got this.
So
my money's feeling pretty comfortable.
it's an Alpha Strike list. He was just telling me, and I was like, yeah, cool. And I'm looking at the list, and I'm actually really, really confident. There was nothing in there that's super scary. He didn't really have much chaff, and even his chaff was like the ground chaff. The
You look at
Panthers are
Kings
still
of War
really
list
good.
the opposite way that I do.
And-
I look at
Yeah.
every list and be like, oh my God, that list is so scary.
it's
and
a
you look at
total
every
control.
list and be like, no, it'll be fine. I'll create
No,
that
but
list.
it's about knowing what your list does and how to deal with what essentially the list does. So he had 2 units of infantry, and I'm like, they're not going anywhere, right?
Yeah,
they're
Paladin,
going to get chaffed up and do nothing.
Foot
He had
Guard
2
hordes?
units of the Paladins, right? And they're both like, the only thing they've got is Thunderous 2, and there's so much terrain on this table. And that's the other thing I want to say. This table 16, I just want to shout it out. All the terrain was on one side. Losing that roll was so big. Losing that, you get the first turn. Every game I played, it was like a mirror match for terrain, right? Pretty much. Except for this one game, and it mattered so much. He got the empty field, and I got impeded city. It was so shit for me.
You showed
I
me.
I had zero angles because it was just forests and hills on my side, so the artillery couldn't do anything because it couldn't see anything. There were no lines. It was one solid, not see overable line in my deployment. The whole thing.
Honestly, I probably would have chosen that side because there was a nice hill to keep me hidden. There was a forest that I could put my whites in to charge out of.
Yeah.
It different armies. Like you showed me the map, and I thought, yeah, I could.
Yeah.
I'd probably
Well,
pick that side.
For me, it meant that like all my fast stuff like will be impeded because there's just no way I can fit anything in there without it sitting and stuff other than putting it all the way forward. And it's an Alpha Strike list, right? Everything in his list either moves 16 or 20.
Yep,
Because
I can
the
see
other
that.
thing in his list are the 2 hordes of the angels.
You
and
have
then
enough movement
2
to
angel...
clear the terrain
No, I
completely.
don't. I can't. Yeah.
Or rather, if you...
You're gonna be sitting
maybe you
in
do
it.
have enough movement, but if you do that, then you're just going to get like multi-charge.
Yes,
so
exactly.
you can't move that far forward. Yeah.
So I had to sit in these things, and that was ugh. And then I had 0 firing arcs for any of my artillery because the hills and everything else. So that was a bit rough. And I had my first negative play experience. So our first turn went well. He rushed at me, and it was all going well. I countercharged a few things, and we just got talking, and a bit of my memory lapsed, but I accidentally rolled a nerve roll in the shooting phase, and then immediately he's like, nothing else can shoot. And I was like, oh, really? And he was like, yes,
pretty lame,
nothing can shoot. And I'm
Get
like,
out. Nothing.
And I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those games.
When you told
Like,
me this
oh.
after the game, I was a bit disappointed in your opponent, to be honest, because this does come up in Kings of War reasonably frequently. I think it's human nature, especially since it works the reverse in the combat phase. Where
Yeah.
you roll. And I have done it a million times. I remember, I didn't do it too much in this tournament, but I remember specifically against Damo, I did it like 2, maybe even 3 times, like a pelican, through the game where and it'd be shooting on one side and then roll nerve and then shooting on the other side.
And that's
roll nerve.
exactly what it was.
So it's not
Like,
it's not a case of do I shoot the unit or not or any kind of game advantage. And Damien just like didn't even bat an eyelid. He's just like whatever. I don't think even I'm sure he would have noticed, but he didn't care.
Because
And
really,
that's-
it doesn't matter.
because it shouldn't matter, and that's rules lawyering. It's not any difference to the game. And I agree with you. It's just not how it's done, irrespective of the fact that technically, by letter of the rule, he's correct.
Yep. And that was his stance. He's like, nah, sorry. So,
Disappointing.
well, no, he wasn't
This is
sorry
Clash of Kings, Viv.
at all. He's just like, no, those are the
Especially
rules.
since you're not playing for sheep stations. I mean, you did 21 for the top 20%.
I know. So
He might have had it bet as well. He might have said he was going to get into the top wherever you guys were fighting over.
So even though the terrain was shit, I
no.
I solemnly believed I outdeployed him. I put one unit of the Heartbreak CAD on my far left flank, and he devoted more than was required to go kill it, which was great for me.
Yep.
I completely secured the left flank. I chaffed up both of his bus units so they couldn't go anywhere. So I had all the charges lined up, including a flank charge on one of the knight units.
Nice.
And I completely stopped his other guys from moving forward. This is the one mistake I did make in the game. I measured to his knight unit 10 and 10.1 basically, and I got him to agree, okay, you can't with the paladins charge the decimators. The thing is though, I eyeballed his Flappy Birds, the
yellow
angel.
Yep.
And I'm like, it was so far away. I'm like, there's no way that's 20. And it turns out it was like 19.9, and it was in.
Wow, yeah.
And I was like,
Especially from corners sometimes.
yeah, and that's what it was. It was a corner behind a unit, like in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, "Oh, do I reach?" And I'm like, "I hope not." And he's like,
'cause you hadn't
"I
measured.
do." And I sat there and I'm like, "Oh no."
And
he
honestly, that is
does."
on you because
Yeah,
you
exactly.
got to just
But
when you're
gotta
moving
measure.
it.
The worst
Get the
thing is
tape
though,
measure
and
like,
agree.
I could
Happens
have
to the best of us though with
Yeah.
flying units in particular.
like the worst thing is though, there was no reason to be at 10.1. I could have been at 12 and still shot the paladin. So it was. So from now on, I need to know, like, I need to just be as far back as possible. Like, there was no reason to move up, and I don't think I'll make that mistake again. I think that's something I've learned really, really well. So
Did you feel your 21 points sifting through your fingers like sand?
no, so not at all. Like, the game was still mine at this point. I had still completely wrecked one flank just through positioning.
Sweet.
And
21, here
I
we
feel
go.
really, really good. So, but then my half-breed cav went into some chaff dogs to then try and go into the angels. Double one. So
Oh dear.
so my
Defense 3,
after,
9/11.
Yep, and then I was wounding them on 2s, hitting them on 3s, rerolling 1s. It didn't matter. They're still there.
Double one.
So then after that, it meant the angels are going in.
Yep.
Oh dear.
So that was bad, dangerous. The paladin knights that I went
knights.
into.
Yep.
I did like, I don't know, 20 or something. I needed double ones. And this was the big one. This was the one where I got all the flank charges
yeah.
in the front. And the worst thing about this double ones is they've got that bullheaded thing, which meant that
The iron resolve.
no, bullheaded.
Bullheaded.
Yeah.
Bullheaded isn't a rule.
Oh well, headstrong. Sorry.
Headstrong.
Headstrong.
Yeah, whatever. So even though I did like a gajillion wounds and stuff, it didn't matter. He rolled that thing and then they could charge.
On a 3-up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Well, if you straight up double one, they can charge anyway. They're not waiving.
Yeah, that's right.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. Well, it wasn't devastating immediately, right? It just meant that he could reposition all the stuff he positioned poorly to then be in a very good position, right? And
You
then
should have said you rolled your head strong. You can't charge
what's that mean? is that
because there was no reason to roll it because you weren't wavered, so you can't charge.
Oh, yeah, right. Sure. No, I wasn't going to be like that. I
probably-
didn't even
it's
know the
probably not even
rules.
correct.
Like, yeah.
I'm sure that's not a
Yeah.
rule.
And then he put one of his other characters that moves 9. It doesn't fly, but it moves 9 and it's nimble and it's really good at punching. It's a special character.
It's
And
nice.
he put him
Nice.
into the
Celestis.
grotesques, did no damage. But then the grotesques did like 11. His nerve, not much. All I needed was a 4 on the dice and I didn't get it either. No, I needed...
Shocking.
Yeah, so that really hurt as well.
Well,
'cause it meant-
Naeus is 15-17.
yeah, but I did 11 wounds to him.
So we've all had a bad dice game. I think it's safe
Yeah.
to say that this was definitely your bad dice game.
So that absolutely sucked. And the worst thing is though I was still in a really good position. Like stuff was still going really well. He killed my decimators because he got both the angels in, but he kind of positioned them really, really poorly, so they couldn't do anything the next turn. They had to spend an entire turn just refacing. So I'm then sitting there going, okay, I need to leave that combat with the paladins because all I need to do with those paladins is hit with one of my artillery because they're sitting on a hill. They're height 6. The artillery can actually see them, even though there are hills everywhere and there's terrain fucking everywhere. So on the 4 dice, I just needed 1 to hit. So nah, of course they all miss. They did nothing.
Oh, no.
So that unit that should have died is still healthy now. Like it
Really was
should be
that
dead,
game.
but it's fine. Like, there's nothing to threaten it. And then I just couldn't do anything, and it ran off, and it didn't do much damage, but it was another major threat that kept on like threatening to flank charge something.
Yep.
And then my big stumpy troll thing. The what's the hero that costs like no points and has mighty?
The dictator.
Yeah, the dictator. So I put it into that guy. Again, I do like 9 wounds.
he just failed to knock him over.
Yeah.
And then the next turn, I rolled double ones to get him to move. And then the turn after that, he had like 500 units surrounding it because I was there for 2 turns and I failed to waver anything. And so this is one of those games where I actually think I played better. He may not agree, but I do. I genuinely think I played better. But the 4 double ones was really rough. And in times that it mattered, not being able to shoot that first turn probably mattered a lot.
So how are you feeling about getting 21?
I think that game was actually, he got 21. I need to check. But yeah, so that game, it was still really fun. And after that not letting me shoot thing, it was a good game, right? Like
Yeah.
he's
So
not a
despite
bad
that-
player. He's just, no, rules are rules. I'm sorry.
It
Like,
was
I know-
20 to 1.
Yeah, 20 to 1. So like, fair enough. It's just something I would never do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Fair enough. Okay. So, yeah, bad luck. I mean, shit happens, right? I mean, I almost feel bad for you.
Almost, yeah.
He doesn't
Right,
feel bad
Andrew.
at all.
Last game, bring us home.
All right. Empire of Dust, piloted by Ben
Hamson?
Hamson. No, Empire of Dust. I've played them a
Yeah.
couple of times and they just
I
seem...
feel,
Empire
they feel
of
bad
broke.
on me.
They have my number.
Do they?
So...
They've got mine too. I gave it to them. They're sexy beasts.
Yes, you're a bit of a floozy, Ben.
I'm right there with you, especially with Undead. I feel like I've beaten them more times than I've lost to Empire of Dust, definitely, but they always feel like a massive uphill battle, and they're like just painful to play against. Same half a dozen units in every single list.
I've never beaten them, so
Oh wow!
this game was going really well. I'd positioned nicely. Ben made maybe a little mistake or maybe couldn't really do much about it, but my Revenant King on Great Undead Flying Worm really needs a abbreviation there.
Jeff.
But Jeff had gone into the flank of the shooting guys that he had.
Enslaved Guardian Archers?
Yeah,
Guardian
that's
Archers,
him.
yeah.
So gone in there and almost killed him, but not quite. And there was a lot of fighting happening. I'd taken some damage, which I don't know how Morgoth couldn't heal it. But he does only have Drain Life 9, and he was on the complete other side of the board. So anything's possible with that guy, though. He's so good.
Yeah.
Either way, so I'd taken a little bit of damage, but I was wrecking. I was bringing it home. This was going well.
Awesome.
Then turn 4 happened, and all of those units that had just a little bit of damage all seemed to take just a little bit more, and a lot of them, unfortunately, on the roll of 2 die, disappeared. And it became all of a sudden, I was very worried, and getting more worried as the game progressed. There was a horde with the crystal pendant of retribution.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Dirty horde, yeah.
+1
Props.
yeah, +1 baller point right there for taking that. Try as I might, I was trying to kill it and didn't die.
You couldn't even do that.
I couldn't. Like,
I thought you were going to say it got you, but
No,
it
no.
didn't. Just
I
the unit wouldn't
I
die.
would love for it to have died and got me, because then I would have won.
Yeah,
But no.
right. Shit.
So at the end of turn 6, I don't think we properly counted it, but I'm fairly confident I would have had 2, and he would have just had 1 victory point. But instead, it went to turn 7, and that monolith thing that can float around and has not 0 unit strength floated on into my central zone. So got him 2 points.
yep.
That horde with the crystal pendant, which I just could not kill, kept getting healed, still ended on a heap of wounds, but yeah, just couldn't get it. It controlled his center, and then I just had the 2 corners on his side.
3 to
So it was
2.
3 to 2. And I really snatched defeat from the jaws of victory here. I think it probably came down to the 4+ roll for turn 7 again, but it was a great game. Again, I would really love to finally get that first win against those bastard Empire of Dust.
Yeah.
This fate, the pseudo undead, not real undead, the pretend,
undead.
faux undead.
Sure. All right, and that was another CanCon.
So that concludes it. What an
Yes.
event. What an awesome time.
So, importantly, ladder. Benson from the future here, just cutting to say who actually won CanCon, or Clash of Kings 2020, because we didn't go through that in our cast. So in first place we had Andrew Goodman, who was playing Abyssal Dwarfs. Second place we had Jeff Traish, playing the Forces of the Abyss. And third, we had Clint Richards playing his Dastardly Night Stalkers.
Did Viv achieve top 20%?
Did Viv achieve the top 20%?
Drum roll, please.
So starting off from the top, like out of us four, you placed very well with a 7th out of 65.
I did finish 7th, yes.
Very
Not
well
bad.
done.
Not too shabby.
Scrolling down a bit, we have Andrew next.
Yeah, 29th, was it?
29th.
Yeah, so...
29th, not bad.
You
That's
didn't
quite
top
get your
half.
40. Did you get 40%?
No, I wasn't in the 40%, which I
Shades short.
Just by a
ambitiously,
few steps, yeah.
ambitiously aimed for.
There's a bunch around 65 and 66, though.
It wouldn't have taken much. It would not
Yeah.
have taken much, and considering that
Just
all
one or
of my
two little
games-
choices or whatever. And then
Looking back, the biggest differential I had was a 17-4. So all of my games were super
Yeah.
close, super tight, super enjoyable.
it's
Yeah.
the undead way, man. They're grindy. They're not, you know.
But still, it was a market improvement on my previous CanCon where I was something like
Towards the bottom.
44 of 50. So I'm
Huge
very
improvement.
Happy.
Yeah, that's
very,
awesome.
Very happy.
So hop, skip and a jump away
Top
on
half.
there at 35th. And then we take a bit of a stumble down crap lane to 45th and 50th.
You guys should
VVG.
just, if you guys were in this room, everybody here has a shit-eating grin except for me. This is like the
No, you.
first time.
The irony is that you have a shit-eating grin.
Yeah,
too.
I know. I know. Like, sorry. Yeah.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke.
Thanks, Andrew.
My
Look,
ears.
I set my sights high. Look, yes, I did not achieve my goals. I was well off. I wasn't even in the top 50%. However, moral victory, I had 5 outstanding games and then 1 proper sherlocking. And I feel like for a tournament, that's pretty good.
Absolutely,
you gotta
man.
be happy with that.
And my favorite game, the best game in recent history for me, the most fun I've had in a war game, was that third game against Clint that I lost.
Yeah.
You got to work
I-
on your submarine strat.
Oh, I know. I need to lose earlier to
Submarine
avoid
strat, not dirigible
players.
strat.
Sometimes it matters that you like it. Sometimes it doesn't matter that you lost in Kings of War if you have one of those really tight games, or it's a draw or whatever. Like similarly, that draw, that losing draw that I had against Mike, amazing game. And if I'd won, I don't think it would have been an any more amazing game. If you know what I mean, like it was just a great, memorable game regardless. So did you catch the bug at all? 45th out of 65 is very respectable. It's your first event. You played 2 games, for God's sake. Not everyone thinks that you're bloody as fabulous as you do.
Oh, look, I think I've learned a lot. I'm definitely better by game 6 than I was in game 1.
No doubt.
Didn't look like it by the
Yeah, the
ladder
results
drop.
did not show that.
Oh, no, okay.
You
yeah,
started off great.
Absolutely. But, like, this is what I
got
mean.
worse.
Like, I know you guys really don't want to hear this, but 2 of my games, like, one game diced me off, and then the other game I diced myself off. So I think that I have 2 games there where I think,
Could have gone the other way.
yeah, on averages, if statistics was possible, and I know what you're
Yeah,
about to say,
doesn't
Ben.
work.
Yeah, thanks. I should have. But I didn't.
Quite often goes that way, and sometimes it feels that way, and it's a bit of a fallacy, and sometimes it just straight up is that way. You know, you don't know. But in any case, thanks for coming down. You keen to come to another event sometime?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of mixing up now between gathering so Abyssal Dwarfs, really fun. I really love my list. I know it's not super optimal. I know it's not what's considered like, the power list, but it was just fun to play with lots of different units. That was, it was just really good. And they've all got their strengths and weaknesses, and it was good.
Good.
And yeah, still, it just made me a little unhappy that a lot of the lists are just 2 units repeated. But I'm really, really digging the
Basileia.
Thank you.
Brazilians.
And but unfortunately, I also think I'd really enjoy the Dusty Boys.
Empire.
No.
Dust.
No, don't play one of those. Just play any army. I'd rather you play Abyssal Dwarfs for days. Any army but Empire of Dust, please.
But I looked at those 3 units with 1s next to them, and they're really good.
Yeah. One's next to them. That's not because they're 0 to 1. It's because you take exactly one of them.
Always.
Always. Yeah. Okay. But
Okay,
yeah, no.
so banned from Empire of Dust. Glad
yeah.
we can come to that agreement. But
But I revised my original opinion when I played back when Second Ed first kind of was coming
When
into
we were
our
getting
scene.
into it, yeah.
And I was fresh out of Fantasy Warhammer, and I really didn't enjoy it. My original opinion was just every unit was the same, right? There's just no
I
diversity.
remember you saying that.
However, on actually playing a good solid amount of, a few games over a short period. I'll revise that and say that, yeah, I'm probably wrong. I'm a bit hasty. There's so much diversity. The games are, even though the rules are very basic, and I still don't really know them, but they're quite simple, but they're very
Super
tight.
simple. I don't know them, but they're simple.
And really, really enjoyable. You don't need all the fluff to make it a really fun tactical game. While I do kind of miss the fluffy rules, it was still really, really fun. So absolutely, I'll keep on playing for sure.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Glad you liked it. And I agree with everything you've just said. I mean, and I miss the fluffy rules sometimes too, but I don't miss the enormous imbalance either. So I like that I can play a close game against almost any opponent in the army in almost every circumstance.
Yeah.
You know, like there are some situations where it's not the case, but 99% of the time we're locked and loaded and ready for a fun game.
Agreed.
Yeah, so fluff be damned. And actually, the fluff's not bad. The actual fluff's not bad these days.
You can read all about it in that book. If you so
The book I
decide.
lent you that you didn't even pick up.
Does it come in an audiobook?
No,
I can
I'm
serenade it to you. If
Yeah,
you
someone
so
read it to
desire.
me.
I'm thinking I might just record sections of it in the podcast, and that can be the audio.
Excellent.
book.
Viv will learn the rules.
Yeah,
bit by
45
bit,
parts.
episode by episode.
Yeah.
I can actually read.
Rumor has it. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to leave it there? I think that's enough.
Yeah, let's
We've been
let
on
it
here
be.
for ages.
We are all absolutely buggered.
Yeah.
But we love and respect you all, and we'll talk to you about other events and other fun things again soon.
Thanks for listening to our first episode of 2020. Hopefully we have a lot more than last year. Thanks, Viv and Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And
worries.
we'll speak to you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, direct misfire blowing up the game. Talking many war games is our aim. Rule books to advice, we cover it all. With the best tactics, we never fall. Bend some spoon and sell liquor in the mix. Math hammer doesn't work, it's a trick. Follow along, stay up to date. Comment, like, subscribe today. Come check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Direct Misfire. If you want to shoot us an email, directmisfire@gmail.com.
The shaklaki of a can opening.
Can sound by that.